All right, here we are. Here we are. WebEx is back up and running. In case you're wondering, I know I look late. The judge doesn't think I'm late. Volume is on. Max volume. See down here at the bottom left. You see my little browser there, or max volume. So I do want to find the link from. Close on this stuff. Close on this stuff. I'd like to find the C-SPAN link. C-SPAN. And let's see. They're saying it's 3:45 on. They're saying it's not till 3:45 on C-SPAN. Look at this. What's this? Look at this. They're saying 3:45 p.m. Former President, Part 3. What is that? What is that? Jesse Banal. The name rings a bell. The name really rings a bell. I'll put this away. Let's C-SPAN over here. I'm not putting a poll on that. The motion's denied. I don't know enough interest in typing that out. Motion denied. Come on, Sherry. My volume is on. I don't hear anything. It's not on. Nothing started yet. They see how there's no one up there? The judge hasn't come in yet. So, who the hell is Joanna? Joanna. And Ben Sisney. A lot of people want to know about Ben. But Tom Fitton is hot. Says, please hit that like. And I agree with him. I agree with him wholeheartedly. What's up with the Secretary of State? What was he talking about? Because Secretary of State doesn't want Trump on the ballot, but they want to appear neutral. So what he was basically arguing was, procedurally it's going to be a mess, because then if you decide directed verdict in their favor and then that goes overturned by the appellate court, then we're going to have to come back here for another trial, for the rest of the trial. So let's just do it now. And procedurally, I'm not sure if, since this is a petition, it's not a regular complaint. It's not clear that when you bring a petition and prayer for relief, which is a different type of action, you're looking to get a decision as far as action that should happen rather than like a money judgment type of thing, or guilt or innocence in a criminal charge. It's not clear under Colorado law whether after you can grant a directed verdict before the defense speaks. I don't know why there would be a difference. It is a different procedural type of thing. Why that we wouldn't be able to have a directed verdict sounds a little strange to me. Seems very strange to me. But that doesn't mean that sometimes some procedures have quirks. I'm sure he knows Colorado law a lot better than I do. So he probably knows it's a question of legal issue. And she might rely on that and say it's very possible she'll she'll reserve judgment. That's worth a poll. That's worth a Sherry poll. TextFact said, I tagged you on a post on Twitter that includes the Pepe meme since you boomered and wanted to watch the whole video. I know what the Pepe meme looks like. I actually watched the video after I dismissed you guys. After class was dismissed. After I dismissed class, I went and watched it. I don't remember seeing that episode. My God, that show is so brilliant. Charlie is such a great character. Such a great character. All right, you want me to do the poll? I think I can do a poll on this. I can do a poll on this. All right, you want me to do the poll? I think I can do a poll on this. I want to hear how loud because someone's complaining about my. All right, you want me to do the poll? I think I'm going to test. I'm testing the loudness of my voice. How loud because someone's complaining about. All right, I'm going to test. I'm testing the loudness of my voice. Almost everything about that. All right, I'm going to test. Testing the loudness of my voice. That's not that bad. It might be not a ruling against, but reserving decision. That could happen. Start a poll.
So turning to the motion for directed verdict.
Oh, too late.
Motion for directed verdict may be granted only when the evidence considered in the light most favorable to the opposing party compels a conclusion that reasonable persons could not disagree as to the evidence or to the inferences which could be drawn from the evidence, and when no evidence has been presented that could sustain a verdict against the moving party. The court must consider the evidence and the reasonable inferences from the evidence in the most favorable way to the non-moving party. Here, in this case, I tend to agree with Mr. Kotlerchek. Is correct that it would be inappropriate to grant a Rule 50 motion given the expedited proceedings. However, even if it was appropriate, I would deny because the motion brings up significant legal issues, many of which have never been decided by any court. For instance, essentially one of President Trump's arguments is that the First Amendment displaces the 14th Amendment, or at the very least, the court needs to interpret the 14th Amendment with a First Amendment overlay.
Obviously they do.
Argue that I should apply the 14th Amendment on its face and that it is not subject to or somehow a lesser amendment than the First Amendment.
Oh my God.
There's clearly a conflict. On the one hand,
there's no conflict. You can't be violating
people in the
insurrection if you haven't
being disqualified for writing a letter to the editor.
You're an idiot.
Clearly speech. On the other hand, you have a body of law holding the standards for finding incitement are very high, and the speech needs to be very specific. The court is not prepared today to reconcile those two bodies of law.
You're incompetent.
Similarly, on the one hand, intervener Trump argues the court cannot look at statements that are in a glacial pace to find incitement. However, the petitioners argue that I can look at those statements for context and to infer intent, and a plan for incitement they contend was caused by the January 6th speech. Trump argues that the January 6th speech does not meet the standard of incitement, but then I have Professor Simi stating that based on the relationship that was built, the words were coded. Petitioners argue and have cited cases that the courts will look at the coded language when determining incitement.
Idiot.
To be clear, I'm not deciding any of these issues. I'm
because I decided them a week ago.
Because in order to grant the motion for directed verdict, I would have to decide many legal issues that I'm simply not prepared to decide.
Because you could knock it out on any one of them. So that's
further, I think I will be better informed to decide the legal issues when I have more of a factual context, which I expect I will have after the presentation of intervener's case. So I will address the First Amendment issues brought up in your motion for directed verdict when I make my final findings of facts, conclusions of law, and all the other legal arguments that I need to decide between now and then.
And please, someone submit an amicus brief that I can hang my hat on.
The interveners, I think we were going to start with President Trump. Are they ready to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor, we are. Would you like a quick entry of appearance, or is this morning's entry adequate for you?
Oh, do we have new people who need to enter their appearance?
Oh, yes, we do, Your Honor. So on behalf of President Trump, Mr. Jeffrey Blue will also be here today.
Okay.
And he and Mr. Shaw will be handling our witnesses today, Your Honor.
Oh, I'm sorry, because we heard from Mr. Blue yesterday. You mean just they hadn't entered an appearance today. And then what about, are you calling the witness today that had the issue with the lawyer needing to be?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Jesse Banal is on, and I believe
this name sounds so familiar to me.
He was admitted. It was not clear to me whether he was admitted just by the Supreme Court and waiting for you to admit him, or whether you've already admitted him.
I think that he hadn't filed a motion, but I think he has subsequently he did it in exactly the backwards order. He got approval from the Supreme Court and then he filed a motion, but I believe that he has been approved by the Supreme Court and that we have granted the motion.
Great. So he is on the WebEx.
Okay, and so is it your very first witness, the one that he's representing the witness themselves?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Bill Patriots probably says, Joe, don't give me that
Oh,
cockery.
yeah.
Remember your 24-hour stream? I was there for
Witness
26.
is
Get a
gonna be on
thicker skin and
WebEx?
buckle
Yes,
up.
Your Honor.
We
Cushion.
need to turn the screen
Get a thick
around
cushion.
so
Buckle
that,
up, Buttercup.
the
We know you
reporter
can handle this week for us.
see
Now
the
just do it.
witness speak.
Cash Patel.
So do I have to unmute too?
Oh, this is going to be fun. This is going to be fun.
Will you call your first witness?
Yes, we would call Kashyap Patel.
And Mr. Patel,
Your Honor.
can you hear us?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Okay, we're gonna need to turn up some volume majorly. I could hear you, but just barely.
I really like them in
I will,
community.
Yeah, I'll endeavor to speak up, Your Honor.
Okay, so that amount, which you probably thought we're shouting, was just about the perfect amount. So definitely speak up.
Will do.
Did you want to swear the witness?
Yeah. Can you raise your right hand? Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you will give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Mr. Patel, thank you for interrupting your visit with your family to be with us today. Let's briefly discuss your background. Am I correct that you're a recovering lawyer?
Yes, and Your Honor, thank you for letting me appear remotely. I really appreciate the accommodation. I have not practiced law in maybe close to a decade.
Well, did you ever practice? Well, obviously you imply you did. When did you practice law?
When I first graduated law school in 2005, I served as an assistant public defender in Fort Miami-Dade County, and later went on to serve as an assistant federal public defender for the Southern District of Florida. And thereafter, I transitioned to the Department of Justice's National Security Division, where I served as a terrorism prosecutor and served one more counsel role thereafter on Capitol Hill.
Okay. And when you were at
No.
the Department of Justice, did you also serve as a legal liaison to the Department of Defense?
Yeah, my duties while being a terrorism prosecutor, I was the selected representative to be the DOJ liaison.
There are people
to
back in
Joint
the
Special
back, man.
Operations
People,
Command, embedded with Special Forces units.
landscapers are on my neighbors. I want to mute myself except when I'm talking.
So is there any way to get him to be a little bit louder without making him doing whatever you just did?
That's what I was trying to do, Your Honor. And
Yeah.
it doesn't seem as if I'm able to without the feedback.
So, Mr. Patel, if you can just kind of lean in.
Yeah.
It would be good. I can hear you, but it's kind of going in and out.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect.
Okay. How long were you at the Department of Justice?
Approximately 4 years.
And when did you leave the Department of Justice?
When I left the Department of Justice, I went on to serve as senior counsel and the National Security Advisor to the House Permanent Select Committee at the United States Congress, where my duties were to run the counterterrorism platform oversight operations and also serve as the lead chief investigative counsel for the investigation into Russian active measures.
Am I correct in thinking you were with the House from about 2017 to 2019?
Yes, that's correct. Just about early 2019.
And then where did you go after or in early 2019?
Thereafter, I transitioned to the White House's National Security Council, and I would shortly after going over to the White House become the senior director for counterterrorism, where I ran the counterterrorism policy platform for then President Trump.
This is a
along with the
marathon. That
hostage
was a sprint.
portfolio, counter narcotics, counter human trafficking, and a slew of other counterterrorism related matters.
And how long did you stay in that position?
On and off for 2 years, over 2 years. The role was broken up by one temporary duty assignment where I served as the Deputy Director of National Intelligence over at the Office of the Directorate of National Intelligence, where our duties were to oversee the 17 intelligence company organizations, along with providing the presidential daily briefing to the president and his cabinet. I would return to the White House after 4 or 5 months at ODNI, and I would finish the administration's term as Chief of Staff over at the Department of Defense.
And who were you supporting as Chief of Staff?
At the time, it was Acting Secretary of Defense Christopher C. Miller.
And when did you finish up your term as Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense?
We both had our terms expire on January 20th, 2021 at high noon.
And what do you do now?
I have a multiple roles. I'm a consultant. I have a national security practice. I'm the senior fellow at the Center for Renewing America in National Security. I serve on the board of TMTG Technology Company. I'm the senior advisor to President Trump for National Security, Defense, and Intel. And I also have a 501c3 charity where I serve as the president of the Cash Foundation, where we have multiple lines of efforts giving away money to those in need.
I'd like to focus on your time as Chief of Staff to the Acting Secretary of Defense. And I'd like to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 1027, which I believe is either already in or is not.
It looks like he's reading my banner.
Is there any objection to that?
I believe it's in, but there's no objection.
Okay, 1027 is admitted if it hasn't already been.
Could you put that up, please, Triana?
Christine, my screen share. Paula, can you let me in?
It really looks like he's reading my banner. Maybe Cash will hit like and subscribe.
Okay. Looking, can you see exhibit 1027, sir?
I don't think so, unless I'm.
I can't see it either.
There we go.
Now I see it.
Okay, great. If you need it to be scrolled, just let us know, but
I'm gonna make this bigger so y'all can see it better.
do you know what that document is?
It's a part of one of the Department of Defense's timelines we created encapsulating our involvement in and around the events of January 6th, 2021.
Okay. If you would look at the third bullet point under the heading Sunday, January 3rd, 2021.
Yes.
Mute myself.
Okay, it reads, A/SD and CJCS meet with the president. President concurs in the activation of DCNG to support law enforcement. Do you see that?
Yes, I do, sir.
What does the abbreviation A/SD stand for in DoD parlance?
Acting Secretary of Defense.
It says it up above.
And that would be Acting Secretary of Defense Miller, for whom you were
Yes,
working
sir.
at the time.
Yes.
What about CJCS?
It's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and at the time it was Chairman Mark Milley.
This is good. It
What do you
helped show
understand DCNG to
that he
mean?
was trying to protect.
That is the abbreviation
area
for the
before January
Washington,
6th.
D.C. National Guard Bureau. Every state has its own National Guard, and since D.C. is a federal complex, they have their own National Guard.
So what do you understand this entry to be conveying?
We had a meeting at the White House, as indicated by the timeline, on January 3rd about events wholly unrelated to this regarding national security. And at that meeting, President Trump brought up the possibility of utilizing National Guard forces for the upcoming voting confirmation process. And that bullet point refers to his authorization, which we captured in this timeline.
And the purpose of that to support local authorities and law enforcement?
The purpose of National Guard has always been, my understanding, is to support local law enforcement when a request is made through their chain of command, which would be the governor or the mayor, since it's Washington, D.C., or the Capitol Police Chief, since we're talking about the Washington, the Capitol building.
Nancy
itself,
Pelosi or
most
Muriel
pronounced in
Bowser.
Washington, D.C.
Okay. Now, I'd like to show you Exhibit 1031, which has also been previously admitted. So Joanna, if you could put that up, and let's start with the cover page. Sir, do you recognize this as the November 16th, 2021 report of the Department of Defense Inspector General regarding his review of the Department of Defense's role, responsibilities, and actions to prepare for and respond to the protests and its aftermath at the U.S. Capitol campus on January 6, 2021?
I do.
Okay. And since it was prepared November 16th, 2021, that would have been during the Biden administration, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Were you interviewed for that report?
I was not.
All right. Joanna, if you could put up page 15 now, please. It's actually the numbered page 15, so it may be different than the 15 in the document. There you go. Thank you. So let me direct your attention to table 1, which starts on page 15, and then we'll carry on to page 16, which we'll get to in a minute. Do you recognize that as a chronology of significant events leading up to January 6th?
Yes, in general.
Okay. And let me direct your attention to the second entry for December 31st, 2020. Do you see that entry?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, does it discuss a DC RFA to the DCNG for January 5th through 6th, 2021 for, and I'm paraphrasing, traffic control and crowd control at metro stations and response capability?
Yes, I see that. That's what's reflected there.
Could you please explain what you understand that entry to mean?
An RFA is a request for assistance, which is the formal verbiage when a appropriate level officer or secretary submits a request for National Guard assistance. And as is documented here, that RFA went specifically to the Washington, D.C. National Guard for the very specific duties of performing traffic control at intersections and crowd control at metro stations. When the requests for National Guard are provided, they are also, as is notified here, granted with specificity as to what they're requesting, not just generally people. And that's encapsulated by this bullet point here. And MG Walker at the time was Major General Walker, the head of the Washington, D.C. National Guard. Mr. McCarthy was the Secretary of the Army at the time. The Secretary of the Army controls the entire National Guard org structure for the United States of America.
And this RFA or request for assistance, was that coming from the DC local government?
Yeah, that's what all those letters stand for.
So if I understand that correctly, the DC local government was requesting a limited number of DC National Guard members. Is your recollection about 340? Is that right?
Specifically, it was 346. The request came in through Mayor Bowser's office, who was mayor of Washington, D.C. at the time. And the specific request was not just with numbers, but what their assistance was to be utilized for, which was our practice when receiving a request. We needed to know how to arm, kit, and man our troops. And in this instance, they would not be armed. If I recall correctly, they would be wearing the bright yellow vest and assisting in traffic duties and possibly wearing protective gear, but that would be about it from my recollection.
Now, if you could switch to page 16, Joanna. And I would direct your attention to the second entry for January 3rd, 2021.
State appellate courts first,
Yeah.
Ed.
And that entry reads,
Not straight to the Supreme
Mr.
Court.
Miller and General Milley attend a White House meeting.
Yeah.
At the end of the meeting, the president asks about election protest preparations, and Mr. Miller tells him, quotes, "We've got a plan and we've got it covered." Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that to be the same January 3rd meeting discussed in the Department of Defense timeline we reviewed a few minutes ago?
It's one and the same.
And did you attend that meeting?
I did.
Okay. Did you attend in your capacity as the acting secretary's chief of staff?
I did.
Was it common practice for you to attend meetings at the White House when the acting secretary attended?
Almost everyone
Do you remember where that meeting took place?
in the Oval Office.
Can you tell us what was discussed at that meeting?
Mostly no, because it was involving a matter of national security that I'm not at liberty to discuss here, but it had nothing to do with these events. And then at the back end, as this timeline notates, there was a discussion briefly about National Guard forces and the upcoming protest.
And so according to the timeline we just looked at, the acting secretary told the president, "We've got a plan and we've got it covered." Was there any other or any further detail discussed at that meeting?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly the verbiage, but having, as you walk through prior to January 3rd, specifically on December 30th and 31st, requests for National Guard coming in, our practice under the law, as we understood it, was we needed presidential authorizations for it. During this conversation, the president authorized 10 to 20,000 National Guardsmen and women to be utilized, if necessary, around the country to provide assistance to local law enforcement.
So as of that January 3rd meeting,
So they weren't
was
brought
there
down to
any doubt in your
Washington.
mind that the
They were
president
just
was on
available around the
board with
country,
DOD
10 to
using
20,000.
whatever National Guard resources
why the
were
other
needed
idiot-
in its discretion?
Bill
No, he authorized.
Banks didn't know anything about it. He's like, I don't see anything.
Sustained. Why don't you ask the question again, please?
Sure.
And Mr. Patel, you need to, before answering, if there's been an objection, which you may not have heard, you need to let me rule, okay?
I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Yeah, I think you need to, in order for him to hear your objection, you're gonna have to move the speaker over so he can.
The mic, she means.
But that's why Bill Banks was saying, I didn't see any record of 10, 20,000 because they're available. They didn't come. There was no.
Did you have any doubt
They would have to bring that to
as you
Washington.
left
There
that
would be all
January
sorts of
3rd
records.
meeting
They didn't.
that
they
the
were
president
there.
was on board with DOD using whatever National Guard resources were needed in its discretion?
Objection, leading.
Sustained, try again.
At the conclusion of that January 3rd meeting, what was your impression of the president's position on the use of the National Guard?
We had all
Objection calls for speculation as to the president's intent.
He can,
To the extent you know, to the extent
he
you-
can respond to the extent he had an impression.
Yes, sir.
Objection overruled.
Sorry. My understanding from that meeting was that the president had authorized the National Guard troops we needed. And under the law, as we understood it, for National Guard purposes, we had step one of a two-step process. And so we had everything we needed, because this is what we do all the time, to go execute step two of the plan while leaving, which is why Secretary of Defense Chris Miller said, we've got a plan and we've got it covered. That's what we do. We do reps and sets.
To your knowledge, did anyone at DOD over the coming days, or certainly, let me strike that. To your knowledge, did anyone in DOD leadership over the coming days ever suggest that more or different authority was needed from President Trump in order to utilize the National Guard troops?
Objection lacks foundation.
I asked about his knowledge, Your Honor.
Overruled. You can answer if you have an answer.
Under our practice, we would consult with the Office of
certainly,
the General
let me
Counsel at the
try-
Department of Defense, along with the White House Counsel's Office for any legal requirements we might need. But from my perspective, and my conversations with the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman and the Secretary of the Army, we had what we needed to initiate under the law the first and 0, 1, 2, 3 phases, as we call them, for the employment, deployment, and activation of the National Guard.
At that meeting, did you understand President Trump to have limited DOD's authority to deploy National Guard troops in support of the civil authorities in any way?
No, just that the number was 10 to 20,000. So if by chance we needed more, we would have gone back to the commander in chief.
Let's go back to Exhibit 1031, page 16, which I think we were already on. And let me direct you to the third entry from the bottom.
This is not Scott Gessler who's doing the
which reads,
questioning.
January
It's a
5th,
much weaker
2021.
option.
I'm sorry. Okay. January 5th, 2021. During the evening, the president calls Mr. Miller to discuss the upcoming rallies. Mr. Miller told us that the president told him to, quotes, do what's required to protect the American people. Do you understand that to be referring to deploying National Guard troops?
Yes.
Was there anything else you can think of that might have been referring to?
No, because Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller and I spoke about that conversation, and we
Objection hearsay.
Sustained.
When you and Secretary Miller spoke about that conversation, was it in order to take a course of action?
We didn't need to take a further course of action. We had already implemented our processes under the president's authorization under the law as we operated. So this was just another presidential statement, but we didn't need it. We had what we needed.
Were detailed operational plans for deployment of the National Guard discussed with the president?
No, I can't think of a time where we ever would do that.
Why not?
While the president is the commander in chief of the armed forces, the duties through multiple, what we call fragos, fragmentary orders and the like, are delegated down to the SecDef, which is the National Command Authority, down to further delegations to the Secretary of the Army. The president we go to the president for authorizations we need and keep him abreast of any issues we think important that rise to his attention. But we have career professionals in place to perform those logistical preparatory works, such as activating the National Guard and running drills.
Between January 3rd and January 6th, were you personally paying attention to the National Guard issue?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, as the individual charged with not just being the chief of staff for the Assistant Secretary of Defense, but for the entire Department of Defense and his office, I was directly responsible underneath the secretary to ensure any orders he gave were followed. And I was in maybe not every single meeting, but probably close to all of them regarding National Guard forces, their employment, deployment, and activation.
Did you attend meetings with law enforcement agencies at which the topic was discussed?
I think I was at the FBI Washington field office one time with then then Deputy Director Mark D'Antuono, if I recall correctly.
Were you aware of and following communications with the local authorities about the subject of the National Guard?
What we did, because the Secretary of the Army is our point person, Secretary McCarthy was a direct liaison in the field with law enforcement and Mayor Bowser's office. That was our established practice. That was the established practice going back to the summer of 2020 specifically and before that. And that was his job. So there was no need for us to directly engage. We had our appropriate military personnel and their staffs coordinating directly with local law enforcement.
And so just to close this out, to your knowledge, did any senior DOJ leader ever state in words or substance that they felt they needed more or different authorization from President Trump before they could deploy National Guard troops to keep the peace on January 6th?
No.
Okay, so
This is the first time we're
Department
hearing
of
under
Defense,
oath what steps Trump
um,
took to protect the Capitol.
based on what you're telling us,
It's pretty significant. I
felt they
think.
had authority to use National Guard troops, and President Trump had been clear that he wanted DOD to do what was necessary to protect the American people. So why didn't we have 10,000 National Guard troops suited up and armed guarding the Capitol in the morning of January 6th?
Well, there's a multitude of reasons, but namely under the law as the Department of Defense was operating under, pursuant to guidance by the Office of General Counsel and the White House Counsel's Office, and probably the last 100 years of National Guard authorities. Step one was a commander-in-chief's authorization, which we had. Step two was a request by the governing body, the local governing body, which is usually a governor, but in this instance, it's the mayor since it's Washington, D.C., and or the heads of the Capitol Police Bureau, because we're talking about the Capitol building. Absent those requests, we were under the advisement of our legal counsel's offices that we could not
Go in there.
activate the National Guard. We could,
If
and
he
did
had gone
everything
in
we
there,
could up
he
to
would have
the
been
legal
charged with
limit
that.
to try to begin the processes of getting these folks ready in
If he had
case
sent
that
people in
our
there
request came in. And what I
and
mean
anyone
by that
died,
is people forget the
he would have been
National
blamed for
Guard is
that.
very part-time
We'd be hearing
military.
about it every day.
They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're teachers, their husbands, their wives, their fathers in the community. We have to go get them. And
They'd be like,
then
"You didn't get
after the
approval.
request is made, we can
Why'd you
do
send them
that
in?"
and bring the authorities in that we have in the Office of the Secretary of Defense to bear. But absent the request, we could not fully launch that process.
Did part of the process involve reaching out to the local authorities to see if they wanted National Guard involvement?
Objection leading.
And here's another thing: if he sent them in, people would say that it was part of the insurrection. Was to send
Normally,
them in without
no.
approval.
Normally the request would come in. But in this instance, the secretary and I, along with others, felt this matter was important enough that we ordered the Secretary of the Army, after that authorization came in on January 3rd, to begin engagements with Mayor Bowser and the Capitol Police, who he had already been speaking to on other matters that we've discussed here. And we wanted to make them aware that the president authorized 10 to 20,000 National Guard, and we wanted to ask them if they had a request. It was sort of a proactive, preemptive measure. If they needed it, we could begin that big lift that is moving thousands of human beings across the country.
So they didn't actually start moving them because
And
they never
why
got the ask,
is,
despite offering proactively.
what is your understanding of
You want
why
their help.
DOD is reluctant to deploy National Guard without a request from local authorities?
My understanding is historically how the department has operated is they do not want to deploy uniformed military officers into and around the United States without the appropriate legal authorities, because one of the bedrock principles of having a civilian in charge of the military is that there is no military sort of hijacking of local governmental offices and powers. And I think that's the way, from my understanding, that the Department of Defense has operated its National Guard with that history in mind.
And if the local authorities explicitly tell DOD that they don't want the National Guard deployed, what would DOD's reaction be?
We, under the advice of our general counsel's office, the White House counsel's office, along with other agencies and departments who all agreed that absent a request, we would not move the National Guard process forward, because we had, or our lawyers had made the determination that, based in history and law and precedent, that that would not be an appropriate maneuver for the department to undertake unilaterally.
But Bill Banks said that you could. Bill Banks said it's an emergency and you're allowed to. That's what Bill Banks said. Bill Banks said that.
So the Secretary of the Army had reached
He's
out to
thought about it for a
local
long time.
authorities, both
He
in
wrote
the
articles about it.
DC government and at the US Capitol Police.
Mhm.
What was the response?
I'll paraphrase, but I think the documents have been made public. Mayor Bowser wrote a letter herself, approximately January 4th or 5th. I don't have the exact date, declining further requests for National Guard services outside of the 346 National Guardsmen we had already sent her. And as far as the Capitol Police go, it's encapsulated in multiple people's timelines, including the chiefs, or excuse me, testimonies from the chiefs of the Capitol Police and the Capitol Police timeline itself, where the Sergeant at Arms declined the Chief of Police's request for National Guard request. And thus those two were our answers, as we understood it, from the two governing authorities, as far as January 5th and into January 6th from a timeline perspective.
Okay. Could you put up exhibit 1028, please?
I think Jesse Banal.
And I believe this is another one to which there's been no objection, but I do not believe it's yet been admitted. So I would like to move that this one be admitted if it hasn't yet been.
It has been. It was
No
definitely
objection.
raised before.
1028 is
1028.
1028 is admitted.
And Mr. Patel, I would ask you if you recognize this letter.
I do.
And what is it?
It's a letter from, excuse me, if you could just scroll down 1 second. I just want to confirm that the bottom.
You can scroll down.
Okay, thank you. It's the letter I referenced from Mayor Bowser, I believe on January 5th, to the Department of Defense, where she specifically stated we would not be requesting any additional National Guardsmen and women. And that was her letter to us. That was the declination of a request. And so we were on standby.
Okay. Did there come a time when the local authorities asked that the National Guard troops be deployed?
When you say local authorities, can I just ask for clarification? Do you mean the mayor or line level agents?
Either.
If that's an important distinction from your perspective, why don't you explain what you mean?
Well, sure. We always listen to our operators in the field, our partners in the field here, police officers, both at Metropolitan Police Department, which is DC, and the Capitol Police Department. We've known these folks for a long time, work with them for decades. And so we always have these personal relationships where we're getting our own communications saying, and a lot of those folks said, we would really like National Guard assistance, but there's a chain of command. And as this letter speaks to the top of the chain of command for the mayor, and conversely, the Capitol Police timeline and the chief's testimony speaks for them, there was a declination by the commanding authorities, respectively, even though the will of the folks doing the work on the ground was slightly different.
Okay, well, did there come a time when the commanding authorities for DC, local government, and or the Capitol Police requested National Guard support?
It was on the afternoon of January 6th, and I believe you have the timeline, which has some of the delineations specifically.
Well, let's put up that timeline and you can point us to anything on there that you think is useful. So if you put up page 16 of whatever that, well, actually, which timeline do you want? Do you want the DOD timeline?
There's another one with times on it, but I can, I think
This
Go
guy,
to the other timeline.
this attorney is
Yeah, the DOD one. Sorry. If you just scroll down a little.
Scroll down
It's a flaggled.
to January 6th.
Yeah, there you go. So that is the not everything that happened, of course, but some of the highlights that were happening during the day. And you can see specifically at 14:22, at 2:22 in the afternoon, the Secretary of the Army had a phone call with Mayor Bowser and her deputy mayor and MPD leadership to assess and discuss the current situation on the ground. There was no forthcoming request at that time. And then Mayor Bowser later in that afternoon would make such a request. And as soon as that request was made, it was relayed back to the Office of Secretary of Defense. But we had already preemptively delegated authorities out to expedite the process. But what most people don't understand is we can't just have thousands of men and women ready immediately to deploy and employ and activate. So once we got that go, we had thankfully already staged to the limit of the law what we could. And so we probably cut the time down by half. And essentially what ended up happening was the fastest cold start of the United States military domestically since World War II. So while we always wish to have done it faster, the timeline in which we did it was pretty amazing, given what the men and women had to do on the ground.
Some people now say that the National Guard should have been deployed earlier. Was any delay in deploying the National Guard attributable, in your mind, to a need for additional or different authority from President Trump?
No.
Why not?
Well, the president only has a piece of it, and we had that piece. And so, as I said, we acted on that piece proactively, went to the mayor, went to the Capitol Police. We've discussed their responses. Monday morning quarterback.
We did anything we could. What do you want?
We wish we had
What do
gotten
you
those
want?
requests earlier. And
Fastest
things like
response
no-climb
time
fence
since
structures could have been put
domestically
in
since World
ahead
War
of
II.
time. But those authorities, remember, I think it's important to note that the head law enforcement authority of the day was DOJ, not the Department of Defense. It should never be the Department of Defense domestically. And them, along with DHS and the Capitol Police, have measures such as no-climb fences
The
that
judge
they
seems
could have
very
installed.
interested.
And, I don't know why. Those questions have to be asked of them.
Maybe those motions are a mating ritual
And
for
given,
from this morning.
President Trump's statement to Acting Secretary Miller the evening before that he should do what's required to protect the American people, was there any doubt in your mind about what President Trump wanted done?
No?
Objection leading.
Sorry.
A little late.
Sustained.
Given that statement, were you uncertain about what needed to be done or what President
Objection
Trump
leading.
wanted done?
No, I knew exactly what
He
needed
thought
to
the
be done,
objection
and
was
we did
coming.
it.
Was there, to your knowledge, any uncertainty among DOD leadership about
Objection,
what the president
false
wanted
speculation
done?
Leading.
No?
Bad counsel. He got in there.
Did anyone in senior DOD
Objection
leadership
leading.
or anyone at all at DOD, to your knowledge, convey to the president any request that afternoon for more or additional authority or authorization, or say there was a problem that required his attention to get National Guard troops deployed?
To my knowledge, no, but we wouldn't have need to have done that. We had the 20,000 authorization. So anything inside of a numbers count for 20,000, just to give you an example, the DC National Guard comprised of 2,500 soldiers, give or take 50. So we would bring in the rest from other regions in the country. But even the amount of soldiers we put into Washington, DC, it was the largest uniform occupation of DC since the Civil War. So I didn't think we were going above 20,000.
Did you testify before the January 6th Select Committee?
I did.
Were you questioned in a public hearing?
No, they declined my request for a public hearing.
What sort of hearing were you questioned in?
Why?
What we call closed door, attorneys, members of the committee, my counsel. That's it.
Was your testimony public when given?
No.
Did you tell them what you've told us today about the president and the deployment of National Guard troops?
I believe so.
Did the committee ever call you to testify about those issues in public session?
No.
Did you ever review the committee's final report?
Yeah, in large part, but not, I would say, I don't think I could say I read every single page.
Okay. Did you look to see if you were mentioned in the report?
With me and my counsel, a little background, we had an agreement with the committee that my testimony, since I was the first individual subpoenaed by the January 6th committee, we felt it appropriate that the transcript should be made public at some point. And after months-long negotiations, they refused to do so and published their final report. And to my memory, it had been excluded. And our counsel took that up with the January 6th committee staff as to why the agreement had been violated. And I think on the eve of the dissolution of the committee, my transcript was the last one released.
First in, last out.
I have no further questions, sir. Please, sir. Thank you very much.
I think Jesse Benal was counsel for Trump in Nevada or Arizona. That's where the name rings a bell. When he was contesting, I think Arizona, when he was contesting, not Nevada, when he was contesting election results in December of 2020. That's where I think I heard the name. And I remember thinking that he was fairly competent from the limited amounts I saw of those proceedings. Pretty sure it was in Arizona. The Cash did really well. He did really, really well. I don't know if they're going to cross him or not. He did really well saying, look, we had everyone ready to go there. You want to know why they weren't deployed? Ask Nancy. Ask Muriel Bowser. As soon as Bowser asked for it, we sent them in. And they got there faster than ever before. Doesn't sound very pre-planned insurrection-y. Doesn't sound very insurrection-y to have put in place beforehand and push them beforehand. Hey, you really probably want to take these folks. Doesn't sound very insurrection-y. Oh, but that's part of
Good afternoon, Mr. Patel.
the cover-up. That's part.
Hello, sir.
It's part of plausible deniability.
I started my career as a federal public defender as well, so. I want to start with the day, January 6th. You were not at the White House on January 6th?
I believe the entirety of the day we were in the Pentagon.
You were at the Department of Defense, correct?
Yes, the Office of the Secretary of Defense is.
You didn't
skip.
speak with President Trump on January 6th?
I'm sorry?
You did not speak with President Trump on January 6th?
I don't believe I did.
You did not attempt to reach out to President Trump that day?
Why would I?
I don't recall doing that.
President Trump, to your knowledge, did not try to reach out to you or others at the Department of Defense?
Why would you reach out to me?
He did not, well, try, I'm not sure. But he may have spoken to other DOD leadership that day.
To your knowledge, though, you have no knowledge of any such communication.
I don't believe so.
So?
You are aware that President Trump knew of the attack on the Capitol by 1:21 p.m. in the afternoon on January 6th, correct?
Well, I'm not really sure when he knew of it. exchanged communications on it.
Well, you reviewed the January 6th report. Is that correct, sir?
Parts, he said.
Some of it, yes.
And you saw in the January 6th report, finding 315, that the committee found that President Trump knew the attack was underway.
Well, a lot of what they got there was
1:21 p.m. that evening.
dead wrong.
Well, that's what the committee found, but that doesn't mean that's what I said.
You have no reason to dispute that, though, do you,
For
sir?
lots of reasons. A lot of their findings were crap.
Well, I don't know what you're referencing. Can you show me that piece?
Yes.
Uncivil. How are you, Kurt? I'll send you a link. You can join if you like. No pressure, though.
Can you see my screen or no?
I see you, sir. I don't see.
How about now?
Okay.
And you see their finding, it's actually 316. By 1:21 p.m., President Trump was informed that the Capitol was under attack.
By whom?
Do you see that?
I see it.
You have no basis to dispute that, do you, sir?
No
Nor confirm it. I will just
Believe
accept
it.
what is written.
And you said you had no communications that you recall with President Trump that day.
As best as I can recall.
You don't know who President Trump may have spoken to that day, do you?
No.
You don't know. So you can't say that President Trump reached out at any point in time to DHS that day while the Capitol was under attack?
To DHS, like the secretary or just anyone over there?
Well, to your knowledge, during the attack, President Trump didn't make any calls to DHS, FBI, DOJ, MPD, Capitol Police, correct?
When you say any calls, I'm not sure. If leadership was called, I would have been notified because we would have been on the call.
But leadership was not called. You were not notified of any such call by President Trump to any of those other federal
too
law enforcement
desperate
authorities.
to try and
That I'm aware of.
and he's not going to catch cash. You're not catching cash. He's
And
trying
during
to
the
catch
attack, President Trump didn't attempt, to your knowledge, to speak with Secretary of Defense Christopher Miller?
I don't know.
Maybe there was a phone call, but I'm not sure. We were occupied executing the deployment of the National Guard.
Sir, you have no basis for saying that there was a call between President Trump and Christopher Miller that day.
What is the point?
I don't know that there was or there wasn't.
What is the point? The point he had set all this
Now,
up
there
in
was
advance.
nothing preventing President Trump from sending out a tweet between 1:21 p.m.
Don't know.
and 4:17 p.m. telling supporters who were at the Capitol
Objection
to
calls
go
for
home.
speculation.
Was there?
Yeah, I don't know how his Twitter account works.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your objection.
Objection foundation.
I'll rephrase. There's no authority that you're aware of, sir, that would have prevented President Trump from sending out a tweet between 1:21 p.m. and 4:17 p.m. telling the people to go home from the Capitol.
Not being the social media genius, I guess he could tweet.
And you're aware of no authority that would prevent him from doing that, correct?
Authority?
No, but I'm not the legal expert.
Well, you testified earlier a little bit about the history of the Department of Defense and how they utilize the DC National Guard. And you said, I wrote it down, all the time and decades they've done it this way. Did you say that?
Yes, that's what the record reflects.
Prior to November 9th, 2020, you had never worked at the Department of Defense.
That's not true.
When did you work at the Department of Defense, sir?
That was my third tour at DOD over my government career.
You had never been in the position of Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense before, had you?
No, I only served that role once.
You had never been responsible for deploying the National Guard.
Prior to what date?
November 9th, 2020.
I had not, no, right?
So you were at the
Okay, and therefore,
Defense Department as chief of staff from November 9th, 2020, and that was after the election, correct?
Yes,
That was after the election had been called by media outlets for President Biden, correct?
I think most media had.
And then you stayed at the Department of Defense only until January 20th, 2021,
let me turn it.
right?
Yes,
So you had less than 3 months in the position, chief of staff at the Department of Defense, correct?
Objection relevance.
Now, I want to talk about your testimony about 10 to 20,000 troops being authorized. You testified during direct that you attended a meeting in the Oval Office on, you say now January 3rd, where President Trump, you say authorized 10 to 20,000 National Guard troops. Is that right?
yeah, it's about it's about January 3rd, but I think the timeline's accurate on it.
And then you said, you also testified that after the meeting, DOD, somebody reached out to Mayor Bowser and Capitol Police saying, we've got all these people we can deploy. Do you want them?
That would have been the Secretary of the Army, yeah.
So you didn't do that, did you?
No, we gave the instruction.
You didn't witness the Secretary of the Army do that, did you?
She responded to
Witness
something.
him do what? Sorry.
Reach out to anybody at the mayor's office or the Capitol Police?
This is such a
No, I
stupid
didn't
line of
witness him.
questioning.
He went and then reported back to us.
But you didn't see
He
him do
reported
it.
back to you that he actually had talked to them.
Yeah, that's how the chain of command works.
Finally,
Cash
you
is making this
testified that Mayor
guy
Bowser and the Capitol Police
slapping him
rejected
over the
offer, and you point to
over
that
the
January
bum.
5th letter, right?
For Mayor Bowser, yes.
I want to dig into each one of those. First, starting with the meeting where you say 10 to 20,000 troops were authorized.
Okay.
And you said definitively that it was on January 3rd. I think you even pointed to a bullet point at one point saying it was January 3rd. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the timeline.
Well, let's pull that up. And
Cash
this is exhibit
crushing him.
1027. This is the timeline.
Yep.
And you pointed to that third bullet on January 3rd, correct?
Second bullet.
I think council did, but yeah, okay, sure.
And you've already testified that you provided testimony,
Oh, I'm
and
third.
it was deposition testimony to the January 6th committee.
Yes.
That was under oath?
Yeah.
Much closer in time to the actual events than we are here today?
Yeah.
And you had actually brought with you to that deposition, the DOD timeline. You remember that?
Well, there's multiple DOD timelines that I brought. Yes.
Yes, but this was one of them and you brought another one too, correct?
At least one other. Yes.
And you remember you were asked about when a meeting when a meeting took place where you said
In
that 10 to
general?
20,000 troops were authorized?
Right. Yeah.
Do you remember what you said?
Not off the top of my head.
This lawyer, I don't. Here we go. Let's
I
get
want to take you
transcripts.
to page 43 of your deposition
Mhm.
and go to line 12.
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I go to 38. Go to line 2,
Yep.
and you're discussing there an article from Vanity Fair, is that right?
They were asking about it.
And according to the article, we're going to provide any National Guard support that the district requests, Miller responded. And Trump goes, you're going to need 10,000 people. No, I'm not talking bullshit. He said that.
Okay.
And then you answer, oh, so you remember stuff like that. So going off just memory, and we can go back to the article when you bring it up. there was a meeting with the President of the United States, Acting Secretary Miller, and some others. And then you couldn't even remember who else was at the meeting, could you?
I could
top of my
definitively
head.
tell you, as I did them, what cabinet officers were there. I thought that was the important thing.
Yeah, but I think you talked about the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff being there earlier today.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you were asked these questions in your deposition. Did you remember the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff even being at that meeting?
Off the top of his head at
Yeah.
that moment, he couldn't.
No. What does it say here? And some others I can't recall off the top of my head.
so you're specifically pointing to a line of questioning about the article. The article doesn't encapsulate the broadness of your question. I specifically stated at least 5 other times in that deposition that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff was present along with the Secretary of Defense, the Chief of Staff, the President of the United States, myself, and White House counsel, and others.
Oh, oh,
Let's go to page 43 of your deposition.
but what about this article in the Daily Beast?
Line 12. Do you remember if General Milley was at that conversation? Sorry, which one? The January 5th, this conversation regarding the 10,000 troops. To the best of my memory, we usually were in those Oval Office meetings with a number of folks. So he could have been, I just don't recall. Were you asked that question and did you give that answer?
Yeah, for a January 5th meeting.
So you're saying that there was a January 3rd meeting and a January 5th meeting now where 10,000 to 20,000 troops were discussed.
No, I'm saying there was multiple meetings in the Oval Office during that week and before. And this individual is reading again from either an article or a date he picked. As I said in the previous document you showed me, I said specifically it was January 4th or 3rd or 5th at that time. That was the best I could recall.
So you had the timeline then. This was at the end of 2021. You were talking about dates. You couldn't remember whether it was the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th. And now you're saying definitively it was the 3rd that corresponds to that bullet point.
I'm saying there was a meeting on the 3rd definitively. I'm saying you can't correspond it to a specific bullet point because you're citing media articles that this prosecutor was asking me about at a specific time and setting.
Oh,
I want to go back to
and that's all he could say was, oh. There's
the
really one
timeline, sir.
thing. It's just one more thing.
There's no mention of 10 to 20,000 troops anywhere in that timeline, is there?
Oh,
No.
There's no mention of 10 to 20,000 troops anywhere in that IG report you discussed, correct?
Not that I'm aware.
Well, you looked through it both before your deposition and presumably today, no?
I looked through some of the timeline. I didn't read the entire 600-page IG report.
Well, you think your lawyers or the people asking you the questions would have looked for that if it were in there?
You can ask them.
Oh,
They didn't ask you about that though, did they?
I'm not going to tell you what I talked to my lawyers about.
oh my
Okay,
gosh.
now, well, Mr.
Jim,
Trump's
Jim,
lawyers are
Jim,
not your lawyers, right?
No,
Did you prepare with them?
Oh, this is so
I
good.
prepared with my counsel.
You didn't talk to them?
My counsel had discussions with them.
So let's look at that 3rd bullet point, January 3rd, 2021. You say that that bullet point, President concurs in activation of the DC National Guard to support law enforcement.
Yep.
That refers to 10 to 20,000 troops.
In part, yeah.
Well, you know that the DC National Guard doesn't have 10 to 20,000 troops.
Right. Thank you for making my point.
Yeah, and it says the activation of the DC
Oh my
National
God,
Guard, not
this is
other
so
National
good.
Guard units, correct?
Oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm loving this.
And there was a
Gosh, you
request, though,
mad?
that had come in on December 31st, as you can see in that timeline, for DC National Guard assistance, right?
346 people for traffic control.
Traffic control, and there was a 40-person quick reaction force as well, right?
Yeah, the CRIF is staged off site.
And that's mentioned on December 31st, 2020, that entry, the request.
I don't see the QRF in this timeline, but if it's there in a different place, it's there.
And you see then that January 3rd, after that, refers to the president concurring in the activation of the DC National Guard.
Mhm.
And the 340 troops and 40 quick reaction force would have been with the DC National Guard.
Yeah.
And then January 4th, it talks about 340 troops and a quick reaction force as well.
Mhm.
You see that? No mention of 10 to 20,000 National Guard troops.
No,
Now, is there any documentation anywhere that you can point to at all, official documentation saying that 10 to 20,000 troops were authorized?
I don't have it on me, but it's in the internal DOD memorandums delegating authorities to the Secretary of the Army, the DC National Guard, and our adjutant generals and the Major General in charge of the entire National Guard force. I don't have those memorandums.
Where is that document, sir?
Maybe
It's not
it's in
one
Buddy's
document. They're at
basement.
the Department of Defense.
And was that produced to the January 6th committee?
I asked them to get it. They didn't get it.
You've seen no public documentation anywhere at any point in time that's out and available to the public that says 10 to 20,000 troops were authorized
When you say documentation, by whom?
by anyone.
I've seen lots of media articles saying that that is exactly what happened.
Well, you've seen media articles quoting yourself, sir.
I'm not the only one that quote. You asked the question if I've seen it in anyone and anywhere, and I've seen it with dozens of people in
Even
scores.
the
of
judge is
articles.
laughing.
Do you have any of those articles on you, sir?
No, but if you got the internet, we could look it up.
Oh my gosh, Cash. It's like this lawyer doesn't know when he's beat. This
Now, you remember
kid
the Vanity Fair article
has no idea
we
when he's
talked
beat.
about?
In part.
Oh my God, wave the flag. Wave
What kind
it.
of question is that? Do you remember the Vanity Fire article? Yeah,
This
which
is-
one?
I'm showing you what's been
Can you narrow
marked
that
as
down?
Exhibit 292. Do you see that article there, sir?
Yes, sir.
Is that the Vanity Fair article?
Yeah, I'll take your word for it. I can't. It's kind of like,
Objection, Your Honor. This was not timely disclosed to us as a cross-examination exhibit.
I believe it was. We have it marked as an exhibit.
This was not on the list given to us by the deadline on Sunday. We received it this morning, apparently.
Well, you all have supplemented the exhibit list quite a number of times shortly before, so.
This is for impeachment overruled.
Now, there was a reporter from Vanity Fair who was actually embedded with you all for some period of time in the transition.
Yeah.
And that reporter then wrote an article that was published shortly after the Biden administration took over. Is that right?
I'll let the article reflect the date. I don't have it off the top of my head.
And there's a discussion of when there was a meeting where you say 10 to 20,000 people were authorized. January 5th.
That's it. That's what it says Christopher Miller said, according to that reporter.
Yeah, you read that article and you didn't correct them at all, did you?
I didn't read the article. When?
When the Vanity Fair article came out with your name in it about you, with a guy embedded,
He's in a lot
You
of
didn't read the
he's in a
Vanity
lot
Fair
of
article?
articles.
I had my office of communications read the article, but we get 1,000 articles a day. No, I can't read them all. I'm sorry.
you get 1,000
Look
articles
at
a
the
day
judge
about you
laughing.
from Vanity Fair.
Not me, but I'm not the
Vanity
official
Fair.
part. I've got
Like
bigger
they're the
functions.
end all be all. Oh, it's Vanity Fair. So that goes
The
to the top of
Operation
the
Warp
queue.
Speed, the no fail mission, withdrawing out of Afghanistan, saving American hostages, and securing our border. I don't care what Vanity Fair
If they
says.
don't cite either the USA
Oh, sir,
Today
you-
or the
before
National
we're not
Enquirer
having
before this is
articles,
over, I'll be
Vanity Fair
sad.
article came out.
I don't know. You keep showing me a piece of the article. I have no idea when it came out.
Well, the reason January 5th is kind of important is Mayor Bowser sent her letter on the 5th, didn't she?
Okay.
And you say that there was this meeting where stuff was authorized, 10 to 20,000 troops. There's no record of it. You then, somebody went from the Department of Defense to Mayor Bowser's office, to the Capitol Police, requesting if they need some assistance. And then on January 5th, Mayor Bowser writes a letter back. Right?
You say there's no record of it, but okay.
Okay. Writes a letter back on January 5th. Do you know what
Okay.
time of day she wrote that letter back, sir?
I don't.
Let's
How
look
would
at
you know
it.
that?
1031.
You can't refute that she wrote it at 11:45 a.m. Can you? You cannot refute that, can you? Cash
Outside my knowledge base, sir, I can't speak to the finer habits of the mayor.
Cash is killing this guy. My God, he's just like drowning. He's like, help! Someone throw me a life preserver. But Vanity Fair says you're wrong. Are you aware that Vox News says that Trump failed to protect
In
the
the
Capitol?
DOD IG report, it says that she wrote the letter at 2:27 p.m. You have any reason to dispute that?
No.
And in the Vanity Fair article we just looked at, it said that the evening where you say 10 to 20,000 troops were authorized was in the evening of January 5th.
Objection mischaracterizes testimony.
Also, it's Christopher Miller in the article, not me.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Overruled.
The paragraph you showed me in Vanity Fair was Christopher Miller speaking,
Yeah, and it says on the evening of January 5th.
right? Then it says Miller recalled, Miller said, it doesn't say I said.
So you think Mr. Miller is talking about a different meeting?
I don't know. You can ask him.
Good answer. Good answer.
He's so good at this. Oh my gosh. This is amazing.
Is there any record, public record, that you've seen documenting a request or an offer from President Trump or the Department of Defense to Mayor Bowser or the Capitol Police of 10 to 20,000 troops?
We would not have made a request. We would have presented them with the authorization, which we did through Secretary of the Army.
And there's no record of that in any of the timelines we looked at, sir? 1031, 1027?
Of Secretary Army going there?
Yeah, and offering 10 to 20,000 troops.
I don't know if that's in the timeline or not, but he went there and reported back to us, and that's why we didn't mobilize.
There's no record of that, though, in the timeline. Correct, sir?
Yeah, the timeline speaks for itself. But it's not exhaustive. That was never the purpose of the timeline.
So it's not exhaustive, but you put in stuff about 340 troops, but not 10 to 20,000 troops?
No, because at the time, that was the specificity with numbers at which we had for actual deployment.
I mean, that was real rather than just theoretical. So that's why we had a specific number.
Now, you've said that this meeting took place now on January 3rd. Maybe it's on January 5th.
No, he didn't say
There's
maybe.
two meetings.
Objection,
But you've also
mischaracterizes
been out there
testimony.
talking about how there was a meeting on January 4th, haven't you, sir?
Yeah, as I've said, I've testified to the best of my ability. We had a lot going on. If I'm off by a day, sue me. But I'm telling you what happened to the best of my ability. That doesn't change the fact that the authorization came in beforehand. It was relayed to the appropriate officials in DC and the Capitol Police. It was declined, and we acted when their request finally came in on January 6th. So if you want to argue about me on January 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I guess we can keep doing this.
Well, sir, it's kind of important because you're pointing to a timeline and saying it was on January 3rd. Then there's an article saying it was January 5th. Then there's something else saying it's January 4th, you on interviews. And then there's a letter that's sent on January 5th, which you say is a response to a request.
This guy's like the Black
or an
Knight.
offer from DOD.
It's just
So
a
the
flesh
timing
wound.
does matter, sir,
Objection.
doesn't it?
Objection, argumentative to all hell.
Mischaracterized his testimony and mischaracterized the article. It was argumentative.
You can redirect on all those.
On argumentative? What an idiot.
Overruled.
Maybe it's important to you. That's why you're asking about it.
Do you recall what Secretary Miller said about whether there had been 10,000 troops ordered to be deployed?
There were never 10,000 troops ordered to be deployed.
Just authorized.
Right.
There's a big difference.
But you do recall that Christopher Miller said there was no such order?
I don't understand what you're asking. When would Christopher Miller, this acting Secretary of Defense, if you could appropriate to a time, saying this statement about an order for 10,000 people?
I'm going to show you the January 6th report. This is page 95.
Keep
of the
coming back to
report.
this report.
There's a finding specifically on this issue. Some have suggested that President Trump gave an order to have 10,000 troops ready for January 6th. The select committee found no evidence of this. In fact, President Trump's acting Secretary of Defense, Christopher Miller, directly refuted this when he testified under oath. Committee staff, to be crystal clear, there was no direct order from President Trump to put 10,000 troops to be on the ready for January 6th, correct? No,
Right.
Yeah, that's correct. There was no direct order.
That's absolutely right. There was no order because that would have been unlawful as we understood it. There was an authorization. There is a huge difference.
Okay. Sir, you're the current, what's your current job for President Trump?
I'm a senior advisor for national security and defense.
And how long have you been in that position?
About a year.
You're advising President Trump on what he might do during a second administration?
On policy and other matters.
And are you paid by the Trump organization?
No,
Nothing.
the Trump organization does not pay me.
Sorry, are you paid by President Trump or any representative of his?
I can work with my counsel on who exactly pays me, but I don't think either of those two are them.
Does any organization affiliated with President Trump currently pay you?
Yes,
What?
it's one of his PACs.
What PAC?
I believe it's Save America.
How much does President Trump's Save America PAC pay you per month?
$15,000.
That's not a crazy.
How
amount of
much
money.
has President Trump's Save
180
America
a year?
PAC paid you since you began working?
It's been maybe a year, maybe just under, so whatever that adds up to be.
Over $200,000?
That's clearly not. if
No,
you can do
that's
that.
not how you do math.
If it's over a year, yeah, but I don't think so. I have to check the math.
And you'd get a position in the second Trump administration, do you think?
I don't know.
Speculation.
Objection,
still second
speculation.
Not really.
Also wouldn't pay that much. So
Now, you've written a few books, haven't you?
A children's book and a new book, yes.
And the children's book is actually about President Trump.
Yes, in part.
The relevance
what's
on
the name
those
of that
questions
book?
about his
It's a series called The Plot Against the King.
And Trump is the king, King Donald.
Yeah, takes place in medieval times. It's about Russiagate for kids.
And the first book, the villain is Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
King Trump is accused of being a shifty knight, or accused by a shifty knight
Find this book.
Right.
of cheating to get the throne.
I gotta find this
You're in
book.
the story, you're a wizard who
Yep.
protects Donald Trump.
I think it's more portrayed as protecting the truth, but sure, it's a children's book. Go for it.
And Trump said he wants to put that book in every school in America.
I think he posted about it, yes, if that's what you have the quote to being.
It's
And
only $9.90.
You actually have
Oh,
a
I'm totally buying
website,
this.
fightwithcash.com,
It's one of my websites.
and you sell swag on that site.
Swag.
I do for charitable givings.
And I just want to look at some of those.
In honor of Cash's awesome work, I'm just gonna pimp this out. Plot Against the King paperback, Amazon, $9.90. $9.90. All I ask is that you say, "Hey, Cash, you gotta appear on Good Logic." If you could like put in the notes there, Cash, I found you on Good Logic.
another book I can read on
You
screen.
sell very swag. I think you sell OMB or Orange Man Bad swag there.
Yeah, when you say swag, merchandise. then yeah,
Merchandise. What does Orange Man Bad stand for?
It's just one of the things you see on the media describing President Trump. So we thought it would be a good way to make money and give it away. We've given away hundreds of thousands of dollars to children and veterans and active duty military in need.
Orange man bad refers to liberals who don't like President Trump, right?
I think that's one way. Well, you can tell me. I don't know.
And you wrote another book called Government Gangsters, is that right?
I did.
And Government Gangsters is about your view that there's a cabal or deep state out there that is trying to ruin our country?
It's not my view. In the book, it's outlined per their actions.
And you write the book about the deep state, right?
In part.
Is this proceeding part of the deep state?
No, it's a law enforcement proceeding.
Am I part of the deep state?
I don't know. I don't really know you.
Is the judge part of the deep state?
I think the judge is beyond reproach, but if you want to get into it, we can.
Frankly,
Oh!
sir, you
Nice.
think
Yes.
that all liberals or liberal
So
leadership
good.
are evil, right?
That's outrageous. I worked more in the Department of Justice for Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates than I ever did in a Republican administration. We meted out wonderful cases in the
We're
National
going
Security
Tim Pool now.
Administration. I worked as a public defender for 8 years,
I'm not sure how. Yeah.
executing due process. So if you want to make that globalization, because the cameras are on, you can go right ahead. But I don't believe that.
Oh God, this is so good.
Yeah.
Stupid.
I have to wonder, Cash, if everything I said before about people being too stupid, it's in fact that the leadership is as stupid, right?
Of course.
The leadership is
No. The leadership is evil. They're not stupid. There's a distinction.
Yeah.
I've worked with all of these people. They are pure evil. The only thing the Pelosi's and the Schumers and the like care about in the world is being glorified in the media. That's it. What's my next headline? What's my next payday? How do I scam the stock market with my husband? How do I come out on top and be Speaker of the House for more than basically a decade? That is the track that people come in behind them on and saying, I want to be the next her. I want to be the next him. They are evil. That's the problem. The people that follow them, yes, stupid.
That was you in an interview, sir?
Yeah, talking about specific leadership. Not everybody.
Yeah, that's fair. That's what he said.
Now, you also serve currently on the board of directors for the Trump Media Group. Is that right?
I do.
And how long have you served in that position?
Probably a year and change, maybe.
And the Trump Media and Technology Group owns and runs Trump's social media platform, Truth Social.
I think, yeah, in part.
And how much are you paid as a director on the board of directors for Trump Media and Technology Group?
0.
Who else is on that board with you?
If I could just ask my counsel if I'm allowed to publicly relay that. I don't know if that documentation is public or not. If I am, I'm happy to tell you.
I'll tell you that it's in the Secretary of State filings from Florida.
Okay. If it's public, then it's myself, Dan Scavino, Donald Trump Jr., and I think former President Trump. I think if my memory serves me.
And former President Trump is the chairman of the board.
I think that's his title.
Devin Nunes is president and CEO, correct?
Yeah.
How often do y'all meet?
As needed.
When's the last time you met?
Maybe a month ago. I'm not really sure.
Now, you had testified on direct that the FBI could have sent troops out to protect the Capitol on January 6th. Is that right?
Well, not troops, but 1811 agents, federal law enforcement.
So
Yes.
federal law enforcement officers, right?
To the DOJ's attorney general and then to the president.
So up to the president, though.
Well, every cabinet secretary does.
And you're not aware of the president making any phone calls to DOJ to authorize release of the FBI or FBI agents on January 6th?
Awesome. No, what my concern was that Director Christopher Wray was on none of the leadership calls, and that DOJ had been designated the lead law enforcement agency for January 6th and was not taking the appropriate preemptive measures to secure the Capitol grounds. So we were working internally to try to get them there, but unfortunately they never did. The DOD did not.
At least
have
not in
that
uniform.
primary
Maybe
role.
undercover, the FBI was there.
And Christopher Wray is one of the members of the deep state that you identify in government.
Oh, Yeps was
gangsters,
there.
right?
I think Christopher Wray is one of the members as a director of the FBI that we've caught lying. So yes, in part.
And who are the other members of the deep state that you've identified in government gangsters?
Objection, Your Honor. At some point, this is just irrelevant.
Why don't you move on, Mr. Grimsley?
Thank you.
Move on means, what's the next question?
Well, I think it means like all this work you're trying to do to try and show that he's biased. It's like because of his sentiment about governments has gotten to be like badgering at this point.
Do you have any further questions, Counselor?
I think he's running out of steam, which is a shame because I could watch Cash beat up on him all day. I might rewatch this tonight.
Further, Your Honor.
Okay, we're done.
Does the Colorado Republican Party have any questions?
No, Your Honor,
Okay. Any redirect, Mr. Shaw?
Just a couple of quick questions, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Patel, to your mind, is there anything inconsistent with the president telling you on January 3rd that he thought that he was authorizing 10 to 20,000 troops, and then telling you on January 5th that you're going to need 10,000 troops?
No.
To your understanding, would Department of Defense typically, when it reaches out to local authorities, offer a specific number of troops, or would it offer to provide what local authorities need?
Well, that's part of the conversation. We would say, here's the cap so far. What are you having? A Super Bowl, a parade, a protest? What are you anticipating? What's the threat analysis, intelligence landscape? And then we work back and forth. And if it superseded that threshold, we'd go back and get the appropriate authorization. So there's always a back and forth.
I don't have any further questions, sir. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Patel, thank you for your testimony today. You're released.
Thank you, Your Honor.
She looks like she liked him, even though she carries the look of a Biden voter. Everything about her.
So our next witness is also on WebEx, Your Honor.
Okay.
We just need to get her lined up unless the court wants to take a short break.
Well, is she on standby?
she's logging in right now, Your Honor.
She's logging in right now.
Oh, great. Let's just do at least the directive, or unless, yeah, let's at least get her started.
I forgot to change this. What do we got here? How you doing, Kurt?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Thank God. This is Uncivil Law who joined me now. And brother, so where are you? You don't look like you're home. You're on the road?
I am not. I'm visiting my parents.
Oh, that's so cool.
And who is this witness?
Send them my
This would be
best.
Katrina Pearson, Your Honor.
Okay.
Pierson.
PRE.
So I got a little webcam action here and a little lav mic, and
Nice.
we do what we can.
Katrina Pearson.
Your Honor, while we're waiting, there's one issue. We've been informed that somebody is live streaming the court proceedings on the internet without permission to record it and to sort of doing commentary as it goes.
Did you get busted?
Beyond the scope of who's there. I mean, I don't know how to get in touch with them, but maybe an admonition
What?
that they're watching that they can't do that without permission
What?
might be appropriate.
And we know that they're not part of the expanded media coverage.
Yes, yes.
Is this
Did you
me?
get busted?
Is this me? Are you talking to me?
Do we know what organization it is?
It appears to be an individual, Your Honor, but there were like 7,000 people watching them.
7,000? I have
It's
1,900.
turning further now 8,600.
Okay, good.
It's Ashley Epp,
Okay,
Who's
you didn't
that?
get busted.
Ashley Depp?
Epp, EPP.
I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. Ashley Depp? Who the heck is
Epp.
Ashley Depp?
Apparently, Ep.
Epp?
I need to look at it.
Well, so
Wait, I'm not trying to do some.
I
What is the?
want to make
issue?
it clear that there are very specific statutes and rules in place in the state of Colorado for videotaping proceedings, and there's a process. It only applies to actual media outlets, and you
Right,
need
media
to request and be granted permission to record any proceedings. So to the extent that there's anybody currently recording proceedings, you are in violation of the court's orders. And if you continue to do so, you will be in further violation of the court's orders.
What the heck?
But it only applies to actual media organizations. What the
I
hell does
don't.
that
Is that
mean?
applied to me or
Wait,
not?
yeah, is that because she just said just now it only applies to whatever
Am I a
actual
media
media organizations are.
organization?
What does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know. I want to also know who. What was her name? What the
Ashley
heck?
Epp. Apparently, Epps, like the guy who attacked on Gen 6. Epps.
Ashley. I don't know what I'm supposed.
That's what I heard.
I don't know what that means.
EPP. I don't know who that is. Yeah.
Look, I'm not. Look. I got it. I don't. Is this me? I'm not recording it. Is this considered recording? I'm streaming. I'm not saving it.
I don't know if that's. Yeah, I don't know if that qualifies as recording or not. Actually,
I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, does that qualify as recording? That's
I
a
don't
good
know.
point.
Look, she's definitely identifying someone else, but I can't play stupid and pretend that like it didn't sound like it could be that she was that she's addressed that I'm incorporating in what she just said there.
Yeah, but then she says, "Well, this only applies to actual media organizations." Are we an actual media organization? What does that mean? What
I don't
is
know
an
if that's
actual media organization?
I don't know I don't know, and I don't know if she was saying the opposite, that it's like only actual media organizations can record, which sounds ridiculous. I don't understand what's happening here. And I'm
Okay, well, how about this? Is
You're
anyone
okay.
else? Is anyone else broadcasting it? Because you can
I
get it
don't
from
know
them.
of anyone else who's broadcasting. I have no idea who Ashley Epp is.
Who's Ashley Epp? Can she clarify this? Help.
Look, it's
Can we get?
Sure.
Do we have to call the judge's office, or what do we have to do now?
what do you
No,
think?
it's fine.
I don't.
I don't know.
Is Ms. Pearson on?
What would
Doesn't appear.
Yeah, technically, we're not
She said she was
recording it.
coming in.
Okay.
Strictly speaking,
I'm not recording it.
yeah, I'm not recording it either.
No, I'm by the way, I'm not exaggerating. I'm not recording this. I don't
I
know if
believe
that
you.
refers to media organizations.
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
You know what? This is what I'm
The
going to do.
order is vague,
This is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do.
unclear,
This is what I'm going to do.
vague.
This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop using the court site. I'm going to use C-SPAN, and I'm just rebroadcasting what C-SPAN's doing.
If C-SPAN has it, then that can't possibly be a violation. Yeah, if C-SPAN has it, then that solves the problem.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'll respect the court's order.
Yeah. So we'll broadcast C-SPAN that's broadcasting the exact same thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna, and I also question whether I'm under her jurisdiction since I'm not from, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to get cross jurisdiction for violating their order.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know Rackets went through similar things, not during Rittenhouse, I think during other trials. But okay, I'm going to do this. I'll cut this feed, and we'll see what C-SPAN's doing. And C-SPAN's doing it. No, I'll use C-SPAN's feed.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I'll use C-SPAN feed because I can't imagine I'm doing anything wrong if I'm rebroadcasting what C-SPAN is doing. I don't see how.
No,
there's
how can
any
it
issue with
possibly
that.
be? How can it possibly be a violation of the order?
And this is my good faith way of trying to respect even though I'm not conceding the jurisdiction of the court over.
I'm certainly not
over what I
conceding. I'm
do
not
here.
in their
So I
state.
want to.
I'm not.
No,
I'm not within. I'm
to
not
the
within
extent this ever
jurisdiction of
shut up for a
Colorado.
second. Shut up for a second. To the extent that this stream is ever raised as an issue in court for any that I'm in any potential violation, I'll make crystal clear here. I am not looking to be in violation of court order. I am not conceding the jurisdiction of the court. But if any judicial body, legislative body, executive body, or any body of the government feels that what I'm doing is incorrect, I'll tell you right now that in good faith, I am not recording any of this. I'm not keeping any private recordings for myself. And every step that I'm taking here, I believe to be 100% legal and ethical, compliant with my responsibilities as an officer of the court. To the extent that I'm restreaming C-SPAN, I don't see how that possibly could be deemed as me looking to violate a court order. If C-SPAN is granted authority, they're granted authority, and I'm simply sharing and commenting there in order to enhance the public's knowledge and understanding as to what is happening in these proceedings. This is a matter of national importance that I think it's important for me to share with my audience. So given that, I am going to proceed sharing whatever is being shared on C-SPAN. I'm not going to use the court's feed because I believe that using the court's feed would be, potentially if she's saying that the court's feed is limited for X, Y, Z, I'm certainly not looking to violate that. So with that in mind, I'm gonna pull open. I really just wanted to get that on the record. You can talk now, but I just wanted to make that clear, and we'll see what C-SPAN is doing, and I'll look into this further.
Yeah.
Let me pull up C-SPAN here while I. Yeah. So anyway, wow, that was crazy. That was crazy. Let me see what we got here. Featured.
It also doesn't really 100% make sense too, logically, because if all these authorized entities can record it,
it's so stupid.
Then
it's so stupid.
They can use it, but other people who aren't authorized can't record it. So it doesn't really make sense.
Years, wrapping that up as a neuroscience administrator for a level 1 trauma hospital, and then made my way into politics.
I also don't think it was referring to me because
into politics.
I don't know
I
what.
started out on the ground as a grassroots organizer here locally in Texas, and became one of the original founders of the Tea Party movement, which grew into a broader array of political.
So now we have the exact same thing except slightly worse.
State level, federal level, and then began to.
I think her first name is Catherine.
And electing congressmen, senators, and ultimately United States president.
And who is that United States president?
Donald John Trump.
How did you first become aware of Mr. Trump as a political figure?
Well, a little known fact about Mr. Trump is that he had spoken to Tea Party rallies about 5 years before he actually ran for president. So I've known about him for a while. I saw him in South Carolina in 2015 at the end of January, and I told him that I heard a rumor that he was thinking about running, and I told him then that if he did, I would help him if he could win. And that's how it all began.
And what happened next in terms of your involvement with his campaign?
Well, from there, I saw him a couple of times, and then over the summer, when he officially filed, he began calling me after my media appearances. I had been doing national television for about 7 years at that point. He would just call and thank me for his support, ultimately asked me to join his 2016 campaign as a spokesperson. So I officially joined the team in 2015 as one of the Trump originals.
Number 2 months.
So you served as the campaign spokesman for the first Trump campaign, is that correct?
That's correct, the national spokesperson.
And did you serve in that role through the election?
I did, yes.
Did you then enter the administration in any capacity?
I I did not. I was offered deputy press secretary, but decided to stay out to help the president's outside super PAC before being called into the re-election campaign.
In what capacity did you join the re-election campaign?
Just as senior advisor, I helped to oversee comms media coalitions.
And what do you mean by coalitions?
Coalitions is basically grassroots, different organizations and entities that have a common purpose to advance together for one cause, and we call these coalitions.
Did you have any responsibility for vetting people who wanted to be officially associated with the campaign?
There was actually a process for vetting because each coalition, the bigger ones, had boards, and individuals who wanted to be formally associated with the campaign had to go through a vetting process to serve on one of those boards. The vetting process did not extend outside those boards, but to those who were officially associated with the campaign did have to go through vetting.
And what was the purpose of vetting people who wanted to be officially associated with the campaign?
Well, in politics, every group has their what we call fringe, and they seem to, a lot of them seem to come out in the democratic movement, many for their own purposes, and we just needed to make sure that we weren't elevating those people in official capacities. So we were very tight on our vetting process for members who were officially associated with the campaign.
Can you stop those people from supporting the candidate?
No, I wish we could.
Well, what can you do?
Well, all you can do is to, excuse me, to make sure that, that they are not formally associated or affiliated. If they are, we take measures to, excuse me, to even issue a cease and desist at some point, or if you catch them, using the name, whether it's on TV or social media, you take those steps to call a producer and say this person is affiliated with us, please don't associate them with us. You go out of your way to try and prevent them from taking, any platform or stage with any of your principles.
Is it easy to police the people who are affiliated with a campaign?
It's easy when you have a set system in place. Typically in a campaign there are processes and protocols in place. Can you catch everything all the time? No, but it is specifically designed for that reason, just to make sure that you are protecting the principles.
So what did you do after the 2020 election?
I went home. I went home back to Texas. I had just lost an aunt and my mother's only sister. I hadn't seen
That's
my
probably
family
true.
in several years, so I had gone home.
What did you do for a living at that point?
Well, at that point, they were still, challenging some of the results, waiting for recounts and such. So through the remainder of December, I was still advising communications coalitions and such for the campaign. But I do have my own media company where I do engage with press, do communications, as well as broadcast television.
In that connection, did you do any work for a group called Women for America First?
I did not do any work for them. I do know them, and they reached out to me with some of the grievances that they were having during their planning of continued protests.
What is the group Women for America First?
That's a group that's run by Amy Kramer with the help of her daughter, Amy Kramer, and I've known them for more than a decade. And that's one of the reasons why they reached out to me with their grievances.
Was that one of the fringe groups that you worked to keep away from the president and his campaign?
No, in fact, it's quite the opposite. As I mentioned, I've worked with them for years. They're pros. I knew they were doing what they were supposed to be doing, and I trusted that they would continue to be pros, and which is likely why they reached out to me for help.
Were they part of something, strike that. Was their group part of what has sometimes been called the Stop the Steal movement?
say, there was a hashtag with Stop the Steal that was made up of a much broader coalition of really anybody who wanted to participate. And then there was a separate physical entity called Stop the Steal that was an organization run by Ali Alexander. So I would say that they were a part of the broader coalition hashtag group, but not the actual Stop the Steal organization.
Did everybody in the broader coalition get along, tend to agree with each other?
No.
The broader coalition. It's like LawTube, right? It's like, who's part of this coalition? You know, it's not a formal thing.
Fighting each other, and it was pretty intense.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, there's different ways to approach what was happening at the time. There were a lot of people were upset. There were emotions involved, and some groups were using more inflammatory rhetoric than others. For example, you have the Ali Alexander, Allege faction, who are typically known for being over the top in their rhetoric, whether it be conspiracy or just outright chaos. And then you have those like on the Kramer side who were just wanting to follow the constitutional process, which is what we've done forever, and encourage people to do what they can in their states, to talk to their legislatures. There was even some discussion about some of the states having recall statutes.
So the objective here is to show his reasonableness.
Did the Kramer's group, Women for America First, create something called the March for Trump?
Yes, that was their. So
I feel like,
let me back up a little bit.
I feel like the judge is looking into my soul.
That was fighting with each
Like, I
other.
know what you're
We're on
doing, Judge.
C-SPAN now. It's all good.
She split off from that group because they were just out of control, and they went on their own path and did bus tours because that's what they had done for years. And their bus tour was called March for Trump.
I do not accept this.
Where geographically was that bus tour located?
I wouldn't know. There was a schedule, I recall, just going across the country, but I don't recall. You may have it.
I didn't mean specific. What I was going for, was it sort of a nationwide or across the country thing?
Yes, it was across the country.
And was it your understanding that it was supposed to culminate in a, I guess, a demonstration at the Ellipse on January 6th?
Yes, that's correct. They had did two previous events the same way, except the Ellipse was not a part of the process of the first two events that they held.
Did Ms. Kramer or the Kramers ask you to help out with the January 6th event in any way?
So when I was speaking with the Kramers, it was more of them filling me in on what had been going on, what was happening, less of helping. I wasn't asked to help really until Caroline Wren had reached out to me after the fact and asked to help because she didn't feel like she was receiving the support that she needed.
Who was Carolyn Wren?
Caroline Wren is a fundraiser. She was a fundraiser for Republicans, and she was fundraising for President Trump at the time.
And what was the issue that she brought up with you?
She had grievances with the Kramers. She insisted that they weren't being team players. She was very upset with them. She knew that I knew them personally, so she reached out to me to see if I could help sort of mediate what she was trying to do.
And what was Ms. Wren trying to do?
Well, initially she said that they were blocking her speakers from talking and not wanting to work together and just being complicated and difficult. And then when I spoke to the Kramers about that, they informed me that the people that
Thank you,
she
Tina.
wanted to work with were the Ali Alexanders in those crew, So when I reached back out to Caroline, I agreed with the Kramers and I told her that it's a non-starter.
I don't know. I'm trying to just figure out.
And by a non-starter, what do you mean?
Meaning that these two groups were not going to be working together.
I don't know what the objective
The problem
of
was there were so
defense is
many people
in this testimony so far.
who wanted to speak. And the Kramers had permits for January 5th and 6th. So in an attempt to try and quell all of the chaos in a very diplomatic way, working with Caroline Wren, who was representing her people, and Amy Kramer and Kylie, who were representing their people, came to an agreement to split up those days so that everybody had an opportunity to exercise their constitutional rights.
Was President Trump expected, or at least being considered, strike that. Was there an expectation or a hope that President Trump would speak at the event on the Ellipse on the 6th?
I think it's always a hope and an expectation when you're in DC at that time to at least see President Trump. And the fact that he flew over one of the rallies and drove past another, I think it was fair for people to want to see him in some capacity, but not necessarily to speak until he actually tweeted about it.
And when was that?
I don't recall the specific date.
And so if I understand what you're saying, that the dates were split up with the Kramers and their group getting one date, which was the 6th, and Ms. Wren and her group getting the 5th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
My guy. So let's talk
And
about
which
where
date
the
was
Sorry about that.
the president decided he was going to
Oh
speak
my God,
on?
that's so good.
On January 6th.
That's so good.
So
It's my
the
locals.
president announced that he would be speaking.
Which are your locals?
Right?
This.
And what was the reaction among the
It's just a picture of me in a
others?
suit.
You thought, well,
Bless you.
what was the reaction among the other
That's so
factions?
funny.
Okay.
Well, they were very upset.
Thank you, Patrick.
But as soon as he tweeted that he was going to see you there, I just told everyone involved that whatever they were planning was not happening. We just needed to figure out, at what capacity he was going to be, if he was going to be speaking. I mean, I didn't know at that point what was happening, but I told everybody that if the president is now going to be involved, then everybody's plans are scrapped. The people who were moved to the 5th did not take it very well, primarily because Caroline continued to let them believe that they were going to be speaking on the 6th. And they had been tweeting and posting pictures talking about sharing the stage with the president. So I knew that she was misleading the people that were moved to the 5th. So it's fair to say that they were not happy.
And what about the people on the 6th? What was the situation with them?
Well, it was very similar because I could not guarantee anyone a spot on the president's stage because, again, once the president is involved in an event, it becomes his event. And I expressed that to the Kramers as well. They were a little, hurt about it because they had their own people who've been very supportive of the president who wanted to speak. And I just could not guarantee that they were going to be able to speak. So they were a little disheartened because everybody wanted to, share with the president that day. They understood because that is just how it is when a president is involved. They just waited for instructions.
I'll be the belle of the ball.
So did you take it upon yourself to try to vet the
Please like and subscribe.
group that would be appearing on the 6th
Thank you,
at this
Matthew.
point?
Well, at that point, as soon as I learned that Caroline wanted to put Alice Jones, Holly Alexander, Roger Stone on the stage on the 6th, I immediately began raising red flags because she was telling me that this was approved and it was fine, and I knew that couldn't have been right. So my initial response was to flag the chief of staff.
when you say the chief of staff, who do you mean?
Mark Meadows.
And what did you tell Mr. Did you reach out to Mr. Meadows?
I did. I texted and asked him to call me because I felt like things were getting a little out of hand.
And approximately when was this?
That was, again, I don't recall the specific date, but it was maybe January 2nd or 3rd, somewhere.
Okay, and what was your concern at this point?
Well, at this point, she had led me to believe that somebody in the White House had approved it, and I just couldn't accept that. So I reached out to the chief of staff to raise that flag, and he did call me, and I expressed to him my concerns about it, and then I was shocked because he, first of all, didn't even know who Caroline Wynn was, and then told me that no one had been spoken to about January 6th, and he hadn't approved anything, and so I was a little taken back by that, and that's when he asked me to just take this thing over to make sure that it goes off well, and
Okay, so let me see if I understand. So,
What the heck?
you'd seen an indication that
Oh my gosh.
Is that what?
The hell's
And you thought
You outed yourself twice, man. There's two of you on screen. There you go. Damn. You're muted now.
your understanding is
I'm
that
so
she was telling
sorry.
these-
So sorry. So sorry.
media and
So
others
sorry.
that this had been approved by the White House,
Yes.
So sorry.
and that was what led you to contact Chief of Staff Mark Meadows. Is that right?
That's correct.
And that was on or around the 2nd, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so Mr. Meadows responded, if I understand you correctly, by saying that nobody at the White House had approved this to his knowledge, and he asked you to step in and sort things out. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
It really was. It was such
so
a
what did you
boomerang.
do?
I'll have to explain it later. What happened?
Well, I went into, I don't know, I guess I call it campaign mode at that point. The chief of staff had asked me to take it over, and that's exactly what I did. I told everyone, meaning Caroline Wynn and Amy Kramer and their crew, to tell everyone that no one is speaking. We tried to get together and come up with
Glad I could help, Ed.
reasonable list to submit to the White House. And Caroline just kept pushing for people that I was thinking were appropriate. And then when she kept pushing, and I told her to tell me who approved this at the White House, because I told her that I was going to call the White House. She had mentioned that Scavino did. So I was very upset with Dan Scavino. I just couldn't believe that he would approve something like that. So I reached out to the chief of staff once again and said, I'm done. I said, I'm not going to participate in embarrassing the president, and I'm just out. And when I told him that she said that Scavino approved it, he said, well, then you should probably reach out to Dan. And that's what I did. I reached out to Dan and found out that that was also a lie. And then I felt bad for getting mad at Dan Scavino.
Well, let me just back up for a moment. Who was Dan Scavino?
Dan Scavino, I think at that point was deputy chief of staff. He was doing social media for the president, but I think there at the end he was deputy chief of staff.
Okay. So you were being told by Carolyn Wren that her people were being approved by the White House, and you initially thought that there might be some truth to that, so you reached out to Mr. Meadows. Is that right?
Yes.
And you thought Dan Scavino was the person that was approving this?
That's correct.
And Mr. Meadows put you in contact with Mr. Scavino. Is that right?
Well, he asked me to reach and I reached
This
out
really
to-
feels like
Okay, and when was that?
just like lagging on
That was,
testimony.
either the second or the third. This was all happening.
It's really hard to. I'm seriously trying to figure out like what are we getting from this that's going to help his defense. Do you have anything, Trump? What do you, Trump? Do you have anything, Kurt? I called you Trump.
If the
Not in
third
particular.
was a Sunday,
I'm just enjoying the show.
All right.
would that would have been the Sunday or the
Not
Monday
just boring.
that
It
you
seems
talked
irrelevant.
with Mr. Scavino?
I believe it would have been Sunday because when he told me with all certainty that that just was not true and he hadn't approved anything from anyone, he suggested that I meet the president the following day, which would have been that Monday before he left for the Georgia rally.
Okay, and where were you when you had this conversation with Mr. Scavino?
At home in Texas. I was really bedridden because I had hurt my back. My age is catching up.
As a Linux member, you should understand tech, but I don't.
So, so did you go to
was not my
Washington
fault.
D.C.
Well,
on
maybe
the
it was.
Monday?
It was pretty much your fault.
I did. I managed to get on a flight that next morning. I felt like it was important
I
enough.
still want to try it again. Let's do it. I just thought it was a plan.
What he expected to come from the rally on the 6th. And so I flew right in and went to a meeting.
Okay.
What's Katrina? I said Catherine.
Now, if Mr. Meadows and Mr. Scavino, well, let me ask you this. Did you express your concerns about these speakers to Mr. Meadows and Mr. Scavino?
Oh, absolutely. I expressed my concerns to anyone who would listen.
Okay. What did you tell Mr. Meadows and Mr. Scavino were your concerns about these speakers?
I mean, I think.
Dude, gotta move his head.
Is this all in the context of trying to throw Trump off the ballot?
I think I would
Is that what this is?
I don't know how this is related at all.
Incendiary language
Okay.
that Ollie Alexander was specifically using. I had seen some video clips of some of the previous rallies or protests that he was speaking at. It was very inflammatory as well. So I just sort of listed off a couple of my concerns. It's a problem. And then that's why Dan was like, just come to the president and figure out what he wants.
I would need like $100 to do that again. I'm not doing it again for 10 crabby girth.
Once the president makes a decision, it's done. At least that's how it should be.
Okay. And just, I got your concerns with some individual speakers, but more generically, what was your concern about having the kind of speakers you disapproved of on the stage with the president?
So I had mentioned before that there were two previous events leading up to the one on January 6th. The Kramers had informed me that there were issues. For example, there were media reports after the first, I think they called it the million MAGA, whatever they called it. And there were reports of fights or violence that had been there. We had just spent several years with Trump supporters being attacked. Then there was also a situation regarding Allege Jones himself, who tried to rush the stage at one of their previous events. And my concern was whether they tried to cause any problems or, these guys don't care. They want attention. They want notoriety. They just want chaos. And I was just concerned with emotions being high, the number of people that were likely going to be there, that we need to be on alert.
So if I understand you correctly, you just wanted to keep these kind of troublemakers off the stage with the president. Is that what I'm understanding?
Not only did I not want them on the stage, I didn't want them anywhere around.
So I guess the objective here is to basically, they spent like, I don't know, a half hour talking here to get to, they were trying to keep troublemakers away from this whole thing.
And they just don't care about.
My God, this is,
Turns out I was right.
they should just started, I mean, this is just crazy.
So you'd had this discussion with Mr. Meadows, and did he share your concerns?
He did. I mean, I think that's why he told me to just take it over.
Okay.
It was just too much to even deal with at that point. So
And you had a similar discussion with Mr. Scavino, is that correct?
that's correct.
And did he share your concerns?
He did, yes.
And so did he help you set up a meeting with the president for the next day?
Yes, Dan set me up to go see the president that afternoon, the following afternoon.
Okay. So where was the meeting you had with the president?
It was in the president's dining room, which is right off the Oval Office.
Okay, and about what time was that?
That was probably around 3:30. So I know he was leaving for the Georgia rally after the meeting.
Okay, and about how long did that meeting last?
Maybe a half hour, maybe 45 minutes. I think I was out of there by 4. So.
Okay, can you describe the scene?
It's a small room with a long table. There are 2 entries coming into the president's dining room, one from the Oval, one from the hallway. And the president was sitting at the head of the table, working on papers, getting orders, making calls.
You guys really can't hear her?
Right. So
It's a little hard to hear, but it's not
Oval Office,
impossible.
the hallway.
I have it boosted as much as possible with an enhancer.
Facing him at the table. And then at that point, Max Miller had come and sat across from me. Bobby Petey had come in through the hallway door, so I turned and saw him. I knew they were getting ready to go to the rally. And then there's just people that come in and out, whether they're bringing the president something or picking up something to finish off for the day.
Okay. Who were the main participants in the meeting?
Myself, the president, and Max Miller sat across from me. We were the only ones at the table. Occasionally, people would come in through the hallway and make comments. I don't remember who all came through. It was just a typical day of the Lions.
Okay. Who was Max Miller?
Max Miller worked for Advance with the president. I don't know his title there at the end, though.
And if I understand what you've been saying earlier, from your perspective, the purpose of the meeting was to get the president's input on who he wanted at the event on the 6th and, what kind of event he wanted. Is that fair?
That's fair.
Okay. Did you come in there with, I don't know, an agenda, talking points, anything like that?
I did make an agenda for the meeting just to make sure that I covered the points that I wanted to cover. Anytime you meet with the president, you can get off topic and talk about other things. So it was my way of having my little bullets to make sure that I was able to communicate clearly what I thought.
Did you wind up using that set of talking points in that meeting?
I didn't use all of the talking points. I used it as a guide in our discussion, but I did express my concerns.
Okay. And what was the president's reaction to your expression of concern?
Well, it actually was not as difficult as I thought, because I thought I was going to have to run through everything. I didn't have to, because the moment that I showed him a list of people that wanted to speak, he just didn't want everybody to speak. And so before I could even get to my concerns, he had already essentially mixed everyone from the list, including his family. So that told me, as someone who knows him and his mind and his heart, that he was looking for more of an official event. So it was more of a hybrid of an official event. He was speaking at Pittowitz on White House grounds as a president, but he still wanted the rally.
Yeah, I agree,
feel,
Eric.
Because he just wanted to use it so people could sing and dance and be happy like a rally. So it just turned into a hybrid event, which actually made me relieved.
So, did you discuss with them any of the people that you were specifically concerned about?
I did. I waited till the end.
Bad lawyer, bad witness, getting very little out of this. Slow, boring, everyone falling asleep. This is not good work by the defense at this point.
The permit holder could speak. I could introduce them. He wanted.
This has to be way more streamlined. If there's any nugget in here that's any good, the judge is asleep. Which is more interesting how she looks on camera than actually listening to her.
He just seemed shocked that everybody wanted to speak.
I know she's probably looking at a video monitor, but still.
Everybody wants to be on your stage. And, so at the end, I did ask him specifically if he wanted Rudy Giuliani. He said no.
And this guy's
Testimony
head,
via Zoom sucks.
Yeah.
Testimony via Zoom sucks.
And
Testimony via
I
tape
asked
deposition
him
sucks.
about Alexander, and his response was
Yeah,
no.
Cash Patel was
He didn't
awesome
even
by
know
Zoom.
who he
So.
was at that point. And
It's,
I
maybe
let
she's
him
got to be
know.
talking to a mic and she's talking.
And that was just a non-starter.
This is so terrible.
That was just my way of confirming that.
There's like an echo in her
everyone
room.
was in line, and I was just
Yeah.
relieved now that I have the president's decision that I can now take back to everyone and hopefully shut it all down.
She needs to use a dynamic mic,
So what else was discussed during this meeting?
so it won't pick up as much of the room echo. Treat the
Other
audio.
than that, he had asked me, if people were going.
She's
to
using the webcam audio is what she's
be part
using.
of this,
It's just like
Can I interest her in the Rode,
and he was
it costs like
the Rode Smart
$70
Lav,
for a
the
Shure
Rode
mic.
Smart Lav or something?
these marches, because wherever his people are, he wants to be there. That's just something that's always been a thing for him, even when he was initially assigned Secret Service. I remember the first couple of times he just walked straight to the crowd to take pictures and selfies and sign autographs. Secret Service had a heart attack. So, we did the flyover and the drive-by the first two. This time he expressed, wanting to speak to them and asked me if they were going to the Capitol. I let him know that there were some groups that were going to the Capitol, they were planning to go to the Capitol. And I told him there were some that weren't, but one thing that both groups agreed on is they wanted to see him. And he said, well, are we expecting any trouble? And I said, well, there have been some incidents at some of the previous rallies. And he said, well, we should call the National Guard. And Max Miller said, well, we should only call the National Guard if we expect a problem. And he said, no, we need to call the Guard to make sure there isn't a problem. And then he looked up and said, let's get 10,000 National Guard. And I don't know who was standing behind me, but he was speaking to somebody. He goes, that's it. He goes, let's just have 10,000 National Guard, and then that way there will not be problems.
Did you give any testimony to the January 6th Select Committee?
I did, yes. I spent a total of probably around 19 to 20 hours through interviews as well as testimony.
Did you give public testimony?
I did not.
So it was in private session?
Yes, that's correct.
During your interviews and the private session, did you discuss the matters we've talked about today?
Yes,
Did you talk specifically about your meeting with the president?
absolutely, yes.
Did you talk about his willingness and decision to exclude problematic speakers from the event on the Ellipse?
Sustained.
Did you talk about your discussion with him about excluding people like Ali Alexander from the speaker list?
Did I discuss it with the committee?
Yes.
Yes.
Sustained. Try to not ask any questions.
Did you talk about the about his mentioning 10,000 National Guard troops.
Leading.
Sustained.
What did you tell the committee about the troops?
Well, I've already asked that she testify about the matters we've discussed today, and she said yes. So,
just what did you tell the committee about the troops?
He's just not a good lawyer.
Did the committee call you to testify at any public hearing?
No.
To your knowledge, does the
Every
committee's
question
report
he asks is
include any of the
leading.
information you provided about those topics in its findings?
So bad at this.
Not to my knowledge.
Why are you
Who,
so
what,
bad
when,
at
where,
this?
why, how? If you start with one of those, you're probably okay.
I have no further questions for you this time. Thank you.
Ms. Pearson, we are gonna take a break, so can you make sure you're,
Another lawyer who doesn't know how to ask a direct question.
The problem with
That's great.
C-SPAN is that when they take a break, they shut down the thing, which is probably under court order, and they start a new stream, and then they're late in coming back, and their audio sucks, and it's very, very annoying.
Oh, look, you got a little Star of David there on the ceiling. That's nice.
It's nice. Judge already made up her minds just to show. Yeah. Okay, so a few things. Let me mute this.
Yeah.
A few things I want to get out of the way here. If you notice how Kurt's face is being blocked, so what I wanted to do, every time I bring up a super chat, his face is blocked. So I wanted to actually bring myself in here twice. And by bringing myself in here twice, put myself, because a lot of times I don't want to just talk over the stuff while it's happening. I sort of want to acknowledge a super chat, give a little like hat tip or like a little you go you or like whatever, and do like a little gesture that's silent, not disrupting the testimony, while at the same, and then I feel bad like if I'm pulling up super chats, I'm blocking Kurt. So I was like, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll bring myself in here twice, put myself on top, and I'll make basically like a yeah, not finishing that sentence. And then basically, and then just sort of mute my camera on the bottom. And that way it sort of like takes up the space of a third party. And it gets blocked and you're still not blocked when I'm doing that. So it was really because you were here that I was like, let me try to do it that way and bring myself in twice. When I did that, all of a sudden StreamYard was going nuts. And I was just like, oh my gosh, abort. And it wouldn't let me close out the tab. I was like, why can't I close out the tab? And they're like, no, you're recording. You're sending out to this tab. You sure you want to close down? I'm like, yeah, get me out of here. And it just like, and the sound was getting worse and worse no matter what button I was pressing, and it wouldn't let me close. It was a nightmare. I was very afraid. It was very scary. It was scary stuff. Anyway, so that's what you all saw there. With respect, that was the boomerang on me, I guess. So technically I brought myself in twice before and never had an issue before with that. Maybe it's because there was audio going on in the background. I don't know, but my God, I was just like, I'm thinking about if I want to try it now. Should I try it now and see if it works now?
Sure.
What the heck? Let's try it. Let's do it. I'm gonna come on. I'll come back in. I'm giving you a warning. I don't want your ears to pop and you to be mad at me if you're watching now, because I'm about to come in. All right. In fact, what I'm gonna do is I'll mute myself here first. That's the way to do it. Now, I hear. You hear that?
I hear you.
Yeah. Why is that? What if I mute this one?
Yep, it's going that well.
One more time. No, stop. Okay.
It's a nice effect, though.
Yeah, I'll tell you this much: when I when I was roaring drunk, when I was the drunk genie. Then when I got the whole genie thing happening on Purim, I was drunk. I didn't realize I brought myself in twice, and I had what's his face on here. I had Nick and Legal Mindset on here. Didn't have that. It could be because I wasn't pumping audio through from outside. That might be what's doing it. You know what I'm saying? I wasn't pumping the court feed or any other feed from another screen, so maybe that's why I didn't have that whole echo effect. But oh my god.
Well, whatever.
Yeah. So I want to share with you and get your thoughts on this. So let's review what the court rule is, because I actually pulled up Colorado's court rule for media. Now I didn't pull up this judge's part, which is really what it should be starting. But this is the expanded media coverage rules. Walk me through if you think that there's a problem here, okay? Because
sure.
All right, Colorado PARR, the public. I don't know what that stands for. The Public Access to Administrative Records
rule.
I guess I don't know what the I is. So a judge may authorize expanded media coverage of court proceedings subject to the guidelines set forth below. That's what she may authorize. Okay.
Media means any. Well, go up the definitions of media for starters.
Yeah, media means any news gathering or reporting agency and the individual persons involved, and includes newspapers, radio and television networks, news services, magazines, trade papers, in-house publications, professional journals, or any other news reporting or other news gathering agency whose function is to inform the public of some segment thereof. Do you think?
I don't know if we're media or not within that definition, to be honest.
Me either. I'm a little confused whether or not we're media, but I'm going to err on the side of myself in this one. So, in terms of whether expanded media coverage should be permitted, a judge shall consider the following: reasonable likelihood of expanded media coverage would interfere with the rights of the parties to a fair trial, whether reasonable likelihood that expanded media coverage would unduly detract from the solemnity, decorum, dignity of the court, and whether expanded media coverage would create adverse effects which would be greater than those caused by traditional media coverage. All right, limitations on expanded media coverage. Notwithstanding an authorization. Media coverage proceeding, there shall be no expanded media coverage of pretrial hearings. That's not what this is. In criminal cases, that's in criminal cases. It's not this. There should be no expanded media coverage of jury voir dire. Not that. No expanded media pretrial coverings of audio recording or Zoom close-up photography of bench conferences. Nope, don't have that. Audio, nothing. You can't have audio recording of close-up photography communication between counsel and client or between co-counsel. No expanded media coverage of in-camera hearings. That means in private behind the scenes in her chambers, or of close-up photography members of the jury. So we're not falling in any of those. So we should be fine. Authority to impose restrictions on expanded media coverage. Judge may restrict or limit expanded media coverage as may be necessary to preserve the dignity of the court or to protect the parties, witnesses, or jurors. A judge may terminate or suspend expanded media coverage at any time. I do think that allowing C-SPAN in there is probably expanded media coverage. Mm-hmm. So a judge may terminate or suspend expanded media coverage at any time upon making findings of fact that rules established on the rule or additional rules imposed by the judge have been violated, or substantial rights of individual participants or rights to fair trial will be prejudiced if they continue coverage. I don't see where I'm running afoul of anything so far.
And more to the point, it's also a little bit silly because, as we've noted, there's at least C-SPAN in the room. They're videoing it, they're taping it, they're recording it. So,
and then they talk about people in the room there.
What is the harm to other people doing the exact same thing?
What's the harm if I share the feed from the court that they're sharing to the public? I don't understand that either. I don't understand anything about this. It's kind of bizarre.
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me.
Some
people are just old school.
Following procedures for requests for expanded media coverage. A written request should be submitted to the judge at least one day prior before expanded media coverage. I'm not expanded media coverage. I don't know if I am media. I don't know if I'm a news agency. I don't know what the hell I qualify as, because this was written like before there was an internet. So I don't know what they want. I don't know what they want. I mean, I can try to look up Judge Wallace's personal rules, because a lot of times they actually have their own rules of the court. If there's anything in addition to this, which might give more clarity, Judge. I don't think I'm governed by her. My question is whether my New York Bar Association, this is the only question I have, was whether New York Bar Association can have any issue with me.
Well, if you're not a licensed lawyer and you don't live in Colorado, then what can they possibly do to you?
I'm thinking it through. I don't think there's anything wrong with what I'm doing. I have every intention. I'm going to
Yeah.
continue coverage here. I'm going to continue coverage there. I was surprised. I looked up Ashley Epps. I have no idea. I couldn't find her anywhere. I don't know how they
So
found
apparently
7,000 people.
she's
I
where
was
all the action
positive
is.
there was
Not
good
your
law.
not your little channel.
I was
Apparently
positive.
Ashley Epps is where it's at.
I was positive they're about to say good logic. I was like I was shocked
Get
when
a
they said
shout out?
something else.
Okay,
Yeah, I was like, that's
like,
pretty
comment,
wild.
subscribe.
Yeah. So I don't know. Exactly, says Joe. My main MAGA Jew is my boy Vlad. Okay, still kicking. I don't know if you the other night I was covering. I think it was last night. Yeah, that some reports are that Vlad Putin's dead, and I was speculating.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and I was
I missed that
speculating.
memo.
I was speculating as to whether or not either side would want us to know if he did die, because I think that Russia loves him, and I think that America loves having him as a boogeyman, and especially if he's a dead boogeyman, that's amazing. So why would they want to publicize his death? So I was like, and they had a body double in his stead. So Joe Kurt, any tips for 1L interested in litigation / advocacy who doesn't want to be a bad lawyer like these?
It's not that hard in a lot of ways. Direct examination, the witness is the star, and cross, the lawyer is the star. So first of all, remember who the star is. You make the witness the star. Who, what, when, where, why, how.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
That's how you ask a non-leading question. One of those things.
Yeah.
Who, what, when, where, why, how. So instead of did you tell the committee about the 11,000 troops, what did you tell the committee with regards to troop availability?
Not did you talk to Trump about this? Who did you talk to about this? And that gives them the whole panoply of the universe to respond to. You're not leading them. And then if they're prepped at all, they'll say, oh, I spoke with Trump about that. That's how you ask a non-leading question. Now, when you're on cross, you want to lead. You want to ask leading questions. It's not this.
And if they don't say Trump, you can say, was President Trump also there?
Yeah,
because that's not leading. Because
that
it
is
doesn't
leading.
suggest the answer. No, technically it doesn't, because it doesn't suggest the answer. Because yes, the answer could be yes or it could be no. It doesn't tell you which one.
No, yes or no is still leading. Yes or no is still leading.
Technically, it's not.
I'm gonna respectfully tell you that the way I was trained, that would not be.
Okay, fair enough. So we're trained differently.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
All right. When do we start
All right.
watching a 60s, 70s sci-fi show? Check locals chat. Oh, so I wanted to share this with you from locals from before.
Sure.
Let's see what's going on. My locals. If you're not my locals, you're missing so much good stuff. So I should read. So B Coop says the stream was invaded by aliens. You can hear the otherworldly echoes. Patrick says my favorite stream was St. Patty's Perm stream. Blue Joe equals best Joe. That was when I was talking about when there was two of me, and outside of and I'll share with you what's going on there. This is pretty funny stuff. Yeah. There you go. Kill the man you on live stream recording. Yeah. Move all the way down the bench. Oh my gosh. There's so much good stuff happening.
I couldn't really see it. I couldn't really see what the.
Oh, you can see it? Oh,
I couldn't really see what it was.
It was a cartoon of me.
You make it bigger?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll make it bigger for y'all. Where am I at here?
In biggin.
There you go.
You killed a man, and you
yeah, let's do it this way.
Live streamed the court hearing.
Yeah. So there you go. So my fine folks and locals.
Fair enough.
Tina Lewis says the lawyer was having his ass handed to him by Cash. He forgot it was being streamed, and once he learned there was over 8,000 people watching, he simply freaked out. He went crawling to the judge over it. That's very, very possible. It's also possible that I'll tell you this: I hit my peak during Cash's stuff. There's a guy out there you should be following on Twitter named goes by Gaze for Trump 24, who tweeted out that he was watching my coverage and Cash Patel being a badass. So I sort of surged from 1,400 to 1,900 or so, because Gaze for Trump has you got a whole bunch of followers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 8,000 of them, but it got shared, and I don't know. I don't know. Somehow the Cash coverage really, people wanted to watch Cash Patel. So he did great. Anyhow, let me see if I can find this. Gosh, this is so damn annoying. C-SPAN sucks at this. They're so bad. The audio is terrible. Everything about them I'm not liking. Let me see if this is any good.
It's
No.
good to see you, by the way, Joe.
Yeah, how have you been? I've been so when you're walking in the middle of a proceeding like this, it's sort of hard to like.
I've been good. I've been experimenting with scripted content and edited content on my channel.
How's that going?
It's been doing pretty well. The last
Yeah.
video I did about 3x normal. So
Oh, nice.
that was pretty good. It was about the taking care of Maya case from the medical perspective, because it's a case that's incredibly complicated. So
I know
I
nothing
decided,
about this case. That's what I decided. I know nothing about this case.
do you want me to tell you about it?
Well, we have 5 minutes until the court resumes. So yeah.
All right. Maya Kowalski is a young woman who is eventually and ultimately diagnosed with a chronic pain syndrome, which has no apparent cause. She is given a controversial set of treatments rooted in ketamine treatment, which incidentally I've taken, but not of the kind of dosages she's taken. She was taking it for infusion therapy and also as part of a coma study that would induce coma to try to help rewire her brain.
Oh my God.
She goes to Johns Hopkins Children's Hospital for what at the time was a fairly routine examination. This doctor named Dr. Smith, I believe her first name is Shelley, I want to say. Anyways, she thinks that the diagnosis is wrong, and this is all Munchausen by proxy. That the parents have convinced their daughter they're sick, she's not really sick, and they're basically causing this through psychological mechanisms where the daughter believes it's true, but it's not really true.
Mm-hmm.
So she acts, at least initially, unilaterally to take the daughter away from the parents without court order and essentially kidnap her in the hospital and force her to undergo all kinds of things because she's God and she knows best. And eventually the whole thing blows up in her face. And so there's also then the mom, as a result of this, potentially commits self-deletion. And
Really?
and the arguments from Maya's side has been that her mom believed that as long as her mom was still at home or in the picture, that Maya wouldn't be allowed to go home. And so that she self-deleted herself in order that Maya could be free. And so they're suing Johns Hopkins for essentially medical malpractice. Yeah, well, no, duh. Yeah, they're suing her for intentional infliction of emotional distress, with the self-deletion being the cognizable harm, which doesn't happen to Maya, which makes it difficult. And they're suing for essentially medical malpractice and negligence.
I don't see how this got past the Paul's-Graph test.
Yeah, there's issues there with duty for sure, and also with causation.
The Paul's-Graph test, if you're unfamiliar, in personal injury, in a negligence tort case. So the Paul's-Graph case is a crazy case that happened a century ago and became a landmark standard, which basically said that you need to show that the person who, in order to have personal injury, you need to show, or negligence, what you need to establish is that there's a duty of care, and that there's a breach of that duty of care that leads, and that here's the causation part, that breach is what leads to the injury. Yeah. Well, the case of Paul's-Graph is that a century ago, this guy is running for a train, to catch a train, and he's carrying a package. And when he's carrying the package, he tries jumping onto the train, and the conductor reaches out to try helping him. And when he tries reaching out to help him, the guy ends up tripping and falling. And it turns out that in his bag, he's carrying dynamite, which explodes. Now, the dynamite explodes, and the tremors from the dynamite go back into the train station, and there's one of those penny weigh station things, those big, heavy things.
Huge scale,
massive scale, that falls on Mrs. Paul's-Graph. And what the court determined in this case was that Mrs. Paulsgraf and that whole situation there, at the moment that he might have had a duty of care to the passenger who's running up there. If that guy fell, that's a foreseeable issue. But there's no duty of care to Mrs. Paulsgraf, who's not in any, there's not any sort of reasonable, foreseeable type of danger, and accordingly, she can't bring suit. And that became known as the Paulsgraf test. That interesting story that every first-year law student learns about. Every first-year law student in any kind of, school in an accredited school in America. Our case has just resumed here. So that's why I was saying I don't know how that mother, that this type of damage.
Was Mark Meadows in that conversation? No. Was any senior leadership from the Department of Defense in that conversation?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. But Max Miller was in that conversation, right?
Yes.
This guy's voice makes me schism.
You said
why is the screen
that day
like that?
that you and Max Miller killed the National Guard, right?
I'm trying to fix this.
That is incorrect.
Let me show you a tweet or a text message exchange between you and Mr. Miller. Plaintiff's Exhibit 265, Your Honor. Whoops. I need to share my screen first. I'm sorry, Ms. Pearson.
I've got nothing but time.
And I guess I need permission to share my screen. Thank you very much.
He's got the lisp and like this quakiness in his voice.
Yeah.
Legendary Racing says, if I learned anything in the last 2 years, saying, what if anything solves anything per lane? There you go.
Still getting the same message.
Lewis
Please don't do that.
Plus K from all streaming channels combined. Maybe.
Yeah, please don't do what if anything. That's the solution. Yeah.
Do you see on the screen, Ms. Pearson, a text of Monday, January 4th, 4:08 p.m.?
Yes.
Okay. And if we go down to the bottom,
I think so.
You can see, and I'll call it out so you can see it. There's a GPO stamp saying it's authorized, authenticated U.S. government information. Do you see that?
Yes.
And I'll represent you. This is from Mr. Miller's phone that he turned over as part of the January 6th investigation. And you'll see at the top, it's on Monday, January 4th. Do you see that?
Yes.
And then because, do you have an iPhone? Do you know how it works, the text colors?
Yes.
Okay, so if this is from his phone, your statements are on the left in gray and his are on the right in blue, right?
Correct.
Okay, so he says to you, you did a great job killing some of those speakers, what you talked about earlier, right?
Correct.
And now let's go down. And you say, hallelujah, praise the Lord Jesus, amen. Mr. Miller says, haha, crushed it, but man, he thinks 1 million people are coming, right? You had that exchange?
Yes, I see it.
And then you say, I tried to help manage expectations. And then he says, and I'll highlight it here, you did, and just glad we killed the National Guard. You see that?
I see that.
And then you heart emojied that statement, right?
Yes.
You didn't say, no, we didn't, did you?
No.
You just said, didn't get a picture,
Yes.
right? And then this.
So you're the one who killed the National Guard? This is your fault?
In a little bit.
It is curious.
Now I want to turn to the security concerns that you mentioned in your direct testimony. But I was kind of surprised.
You did it.
I didn't hear you say that the security concerns you were worried about were risks to Trump supporters. That was your security concern, wasn't it?
That was one of my concerns, yes.
Well, in your interview with the January 6th committee, which that transcript is made public, right? You know that.
That's correct.
No one's keeping it a secret, are they?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. The only security concern you mentioned was security concerns to Trump supporters, right?
I believe I mentioned concerns generally, but when they ask for an example, that is one that I give.
Well, let's look at that, Ms. Pearson. I'm going to pull up your interview that you had with representatives of the January 6th committee, this public interview. Now, but before I do that, before you did that, you knew that it was unlawful to provide false information to Congress, right?
At 6:30, I'm going to need to go for 10 minutes.
So you're under oath here today. You had a similar obligation at that time, right?
I'll hold the floor for you for
Okay.
10.
Thanks.
So I'm pulling up page 124
This is cross
of
the dam.
Exhibit 264, and I'm
put
going to
in the banner.
bring the screen out. Is that big enough for you to read?
I also please hit like and subscribe.
So the question that you were asked was, talk about the National Guard. It says, what specifically did you tell the president or Mr. Miller about security concerns that you had for that day, for the day, right? You see that?
Yes.
And then if we go down, you have 2 paragraphs of answers, and you talk about some physical assaults there were, conflicts between Black Lives Matter and those other guys. I don't even remember who they all were. Countless reports of people being attacked at some of these marches or rallies or whatever you want to call them. Now, were you referring here to the November and December rallies you talked about briefly?
Yes.
The ones where Trump either visited in a motorcade to express his support, and then the other one, he flew over in Marine One and did 2 laps, right? Around over the protest, and everyone at the protest thought that, yeah, but everyone at the protest thought that was pretty great that the president expressed support that way, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so going back to your answer, you say there was high potential that on top of all the previous encounters that specifically Trump supporters have run into with being attacked pretty much anywhere, right? Did you identify any other concern, security concern, other than Trump supporters?
I spoke to the committee investigators on more than one occasion, so I expressed all of my concerns, yes.
That wasn't quite my question, Ms. Pearson. Are you telling us that there's a written record of you telling people under oath that you expressed concerns about the security of the Capitol?
I didn't have anything to do with the Capitol, so I don't know what you're referring to.
Okay. Well, I'm just asking what you testified to. Have you ever testified under oath that, or being in trouble for lying like you are to Congress, that you had security concerns about the Capitol?
I had security concerns about the rally.
So that's a no. You've never told anyone that you had security concerns about the Capitol, did you?
I mentioned the bad actors who had previously caused concerns at other capitals, and why I was concerned generally and specifically. If you go to the next line where you highlighted, it says I was concerned that people would come and try to start trouble, and that was my concern. That is a general concern.
Your Honor, I move to strike as non-responsive.
Overruled.
But can you, I want to ask a very simple question, Ms. Pearson. Have you ever testified that you had a security concern about the Capitol, where you mentioned the Capitol?
I don't recall specifically because my concerns were general.
Okay. Now, did the White House tell anyone publicly that Trump was going to call on people to march with him to the Capitol on the ellipse speech?
Did the White House say publicly that he was? I'm not aware.
Okay. In fact, you knew that Ms. Kramer did not have a permit to march to the Capitol, right?
That is correct.
And that because of that, if the National Park Service found out about a march to the Capitol, she would get in trouble, right?
That is what she expressed to me.
Hey, anyone can
And
walk
in
down the
fact,
sidewalk.
you've
now.
never seen a permit to march to the Capitol,
No,
have you?
We'll march on the sidewalk.
I'll go with permission.
That's legal.
And you've never seen any written proof at the time that any agency outside of the White House knew of Trump's plan to tell the crowd to march to the Capitol, do you?
I'm not aware of the White House plans.
But you've never seen anything yourself.
No.
Now, I want to turn to events later in the day on January 6th. In the moment, what you said was Trump asked for a civil war, right?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, let's look at your text.
You know, you got so little positive testimony from this
Yeah.
witness. From
And what I want
Even-
to do, this is a
Even if the text
between
says
you,
this, it's hyperbolic. I
Brad
know it's hyperbolic
Parscale,
without reading it.
Give it 263.
just saying, there's so much potential
You see
negative
that?
with her. I don't know why they brought her out here.
And you see the date here. I'll just highlight one. Is it big enough for you to read, by the way?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is January 6th in the evening, right?
Correct.
And it goes back and forth. I want to give a little context to make sure we get your text exactly right. What and who is Mr. Parscale at this time?
He's the former 2020 campaign manager.
Right. But he had a pretty good idea of how Trump communicated to his supporters, right?
What the hell is this?
This calls for speculation.
Well, Mr. Trump put him in charge of his campaign, right?
Actually, he fired Brad Parscale.
Well, a lot of people have been fired by Mr. Trump, but at some point, Mr. Trump put
Objection,
Mr. Parscale
argument,
in
please.
charge of his campaign, right?
Correct.
Okay. And so what Mr. Parscale says to you on January 6th is that was a sitting president asking for a civil war, right? That's what he says.
That's not coming from Trump,
And then
though.
you talk about
That wasn't
say
your
Lincoln
question.
actually
What
suspended
kind of
habeas corpus.
bullshit?
And it's kind of hard to follow
Stupid.
the thread because it looks like you're each texting to each other. This happens to all of us, right? You're texting while someone else is responding, so it doesn't always match up. But I want to make sure you see the full exchange. A sitting president asking for a civil war. You respond, this one, and then you say Lincoln actually suspended habeas corpus. And then
He
Mr.
did.
Parscale says, well, he better be right.
What?
And then let's turn to see what you say on the next page. You say, he asked for a civil war. You see that?
Do you see what I said after that? Don't over dramatize.
Right, but you said he asked for a civil war, right?
Responding to Brad Parscale, yes.
Yeah.
that's correct.
Now, we can all agree that President Lincoln never asked for a civil war, did he?
Oh, he did. He kind of did.
Did he ask for it?
He knew it was
or did
coming.
he actually do it?
Asked for it.
It's pretty stupid. This is so he's trying to play some man.
Okay, but the he you're referring to right here, when you say he
I'll be back
asked
in
for
10 minutes.
civil war,
This guy is a
that is
clown.
Trump,
This is
right?
so
What
dumb.
you're saying is Trump
This guy's
asked
a
for a
clown.
civil war,
Clown.
right?
No, it's just saying
What I'm saying
No.
is Brad was over dramatizing
by saying
he asked for a civil war. You have to read the entire text.
Well, that's what we're doing.
well, you're not.
No, you're not.
Because you stop at he asked for a civil war. and
Wow, what a
you
clown.
ignore the rest of the
Unbelievable.
text.
I'll be back real shortly.
I'm just
Okay.
putting your words in context.
Oh, no, you're not. You're taking them out of context.
Excuse me, Ms. Pearson. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I want to make sure we're efficient. And I'm showing everyone your text. We're talking about your whole text. If there's anything else you want me to show, I'm happy to do it. But you said on January 6th, he asked for a civil war. Don't over dramatize, right? And
Yes.
okay.
In response to his text.
Now, also on January 6th, while the insurrection was underway, you knew full well that the mob's purpose was to come for the Capitol, right?
I I don't know that I would know their purpose.
How would you possibly know what the mob
Well,
wanted?
you said,
Pretty clear watching it unfold what was happening.
right, but you said on January 6th that the mob came for the Capitol, right?
And do you
Well-
have that to show me?
Sure.
They went there.
Context.
This is Exhibit 258, Your Honor. And this is text with you and Taylor Budowich. And I'm pronouncing that name right? Can you pronounce it so I get it right?
Yes, that's correct.
Budowich?
That's correct.
Okay. And you're texting back and forth during the insurrection on January 6th, right?
During the protest, that's correct.
Is
Don't accept his characterization. I like it.
and Taylor
accept this
at 2:08 says to you, get out of the city. Night is going to be tough. Do you see that?
I do see that, yes.
And then you respond, there's another text on the next page, but the first part of your text is, I don't think they'll riot. And then you say, they came for the Capitol. Do you see that?
And then I say, so crazy.
Yeah.
Yes, I see.
And
They came for the Capitol. What is that even supposed to mean in this context?
then I want to talk about a text exchange you had with Mr. Miller. And within 24 hours of these events occurring, and you knew pretty quickly that police officers were injured and someone had been killed, right, in this attack on the Capitol?
I didn't know it until it was reported.
But you knew that day, right, like most Americans, that someone had been killed.
I'm supposed to be at 6:45, not 6:30.
Okay.
So I take my time and break.
And so the next
So
day,
you think it's
after
a
you
glitter
knew that
what?
someone had been killed and many police officers had been injured, you were making jokes about the insurrection, weren't you?
I don't recall.
Well, let's look at what you
It's
said.
also surreal.
This is back on your text exchange with Mr. Miller. And if we see here, again, you're in gray on the left. And this is a picture that you sent where you say, definitely not a Trump supporter, no chance. And now I want to talk about the exchange on January 7th in the morning, right? So the morning after the Capitol was attacked, you sort of posted a meme, right? 2020 is finally over. That was the craziest year ever. 2021. But wait, there's more. And remind me of that guy.
Oh my God. What an
Infomercial guy.
jackass
Bob
that guy
somebody,
is.
what's his name?
Billy Mays.
I don't remember his name, but yes.
But he's the guy that sells you stuff on late
His name
night.
is Billy
TV.
Mays. Damn it.
Okay.
What a
So
jackass.
this is what you
This whole
said,
line of
unprompted, to
questioning is
Mr.
so
Miller.
stupid.
And then
Oh, you weren't
the
solemn
next
enough.
day, or
That's
sorry, the
stupid.
texter
Idiot.
consider exchanges, and he says never too soon. And then you send a picture of
Podium guy.
now of someone carrying
This is
out
so
a Capitol.
stupid.
You say, and you say you
College.
have to
You were
admit
mean.
that
You
seeing
were insensitive.
Nancy Pelosi's lectern being carried away by a Trump supporter
Yeah,
is
that
pretty
means-
damn funny, right?
This means that Trump caused insurrection.
And
What a
this
jackass.
was
This whole line of questions
less
is
than
stupid. I would be
24
objecting
hours
to this.
after our Capitol had been attacked
I would be
after
objecting
a
to
speech
this.
by Mr. Trump, right?
This is so stupid.
That's correct.
No further questions.
You're
I'd say
a
I don't agree with the
jackass.
characterization. I'd be that guy. I don't
Yeah,
agree with the characterization.
my redirect would be like, do you think that lawyer is a jackass for asking these line of questions?
Yeah.
Objection leading, withdrawn.
I'm allowed to lead on cross.
Thank you
No,
for
I'm
your
redoing it.
testimony, Ms. Pearson. You are released.
Off topic,
All
back in
right.
the beach, I want to tell you my dog is the official watching the Watchers pup. Went to Arizona and got him from Robert Gouvet's mom.
Nice.
Awesome. That's so cool.
Your Honor, can we move
All right,
it?
I'm going to sign off. It's time for dinner.
Later, brother. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's,
All right, guys. See you guys. Have fun.
the text exchange is exhibit 265.
So this was like the stupidest line of questioning. They should have been objecting to it. It was terrible.
263.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Well, I don't know why not.
263 and 265
It's not relevant.
admitted.
It's not relevant to anything.
Your Honor, our next witness is Amy Kramer. I had to get my head around it, and she's on the East Coast. She is available now if you would like to proceed, but she would prefer to go first thing in the morning because it's now 6:30 her time.
And do you have another?
Oh no, she would be the only. We would be breaking if we did not bring her up. Call her now.
You have a pretty long witness list, and I just want to make sure that we're gonna wrap up and take into account that Mr. Keefe also needs to testify. So I'm willing to go to 5:30 as planned, but I don't want to be told tomorrow or Friday that we're not going to finish because we're breaking early on a bunch of days.
Your Honor, I understand. We think we'll
wanna
be able to finish by then, but if you're concerned about it, I do not mind putting her on now.
I really leave it to you because I have no idea how long it'll take with any of you.
So can you just give me 2 minutes and I'll get back to you?
Well, the last
I just want to
witness
confirm
was
with Mr.
bad.
Gessler since he is lead counsel, but
There was
I'm
more
pretty sure
damage
he's
than
fine
good
with
out
this.
of
But
it.
let me
That was
check.
that was really bad. That was really bad. It's not good strategy. It's not good strategy. I don't think that there was anything there that was terribly damning as far as what Trump himself did. But it's like it just was not helpful. It was long. It wasted time. It was I struggle to tell you what good came out of it. That they took steps to try and make sure that troublemakers wouldn't be on the stage. That's it. So for that, you have to actually have the bad imagery of his staff laughing about the insurrection happening. I mean, this was it's stupid. It was very poor planning. I'm disappointed in his counsel for putting that witness up there. That was bad. I'm being honest with you as far as what's good lawyering, what's bad lawyering. Otherwise, why watch me? You might not like what I'm saying on this. I'm just telling you the truth, though.
Oh, you're gone for the week?
Putting cash on was amazing. Putting Katrina up was terrible. And I know there wasn't an insurrection. Of course there wasn't an insurrection. I'm simply saying that that's how this judge is going to look at it, that they're laughing at an insurrection. That his own staff, who's supposed to be stopping it, are laughing at the insurrection. That's how it reads in her mind. You have to understand how that plays. I understand that it's after the fact and that they, whatchamacallit, it's like now that it happens, sometimes instead of crying, you laugh and whatever. And some of the memes were funny. You know, so I get it. I understand it. You have to understand that, hey, what are we getting out of this witness? What do we need this witness to do for us? And what is the potential downside? That's part of strategizing as an effective attorney, as effective counsel for your clients. And I think that this was ineffective as far as potential downside versus potential upside. Your upside was very limited, and your downside, as far as the image that you're presenting for the judge, was significant. This is the defense's side, yeah.
Your Honor, we're not concerned about finishing. We should be able to finish the 4 fact witnesses tomorrow that we have left. Kramer, Bjorklund, Van.
He wants to do Kramer tomorrow so badly. He wants to prep her.
Fine, thank you, fine. And
he's like, don't make me go now. I don't want to go now.
Congressman Buck. And then that should be easily done tomorrow. And then on Friday, we expect to have our expert in the morning, and we would be done at that point.
Okay, I'm sorry, you said Fine, Bjorklund, Buck, and
Kramer.
So are you not calling Congressman Niels?
No, we're not. We actually have. We're not going to be calling Congressman Niels, and we're not calling Mr. Van der Veen.
You're calling Buck? Isn't Buck the one who said he's not going to vote for his speaker?
Yeah, I think
someone
we'll
who
be in fine
supports
shape.
someone who doesn't admit that that Biden won? Isn't that what Ken Buck said?
For the day, and reconvene tomorrow at 8 a.m.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. So I actually have a rule, and that rule happens I'm very, very open in my speech. On my speech, I'm really, really open as to, like, people can pretty much say anything they want in my chat. They can come and they can say pretty much anything. Pretty much anything. But you can't violate terms of service, you can't spam, and you can't be a stinking racist. So, adios, Captain Flatastic.
Do I have to do anything special to get this out? Like
No,
eject? Just pull it? Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're
trying
a
to never use
loser.
that.
So, all right. And that is our show. Anyhow, where was I?
Yeah. Done, huh?
All right. So it seems as if they're going to be bringing Kramer first thing in the morning at 8 a.m., which means I'm going to be starting at 10 a.m. my time. And I'm planning on doing a show tonight. I'm not positive, but I'm planning on doing a show tonight. So that is the deal tonight. So I thank you all for joining, and I look forward to seeing you all this evening. If you're here, please make sure you like and subscribe. Like and subscribe, because otherwise, I don't care if he's seeking re-election. I hope that guy. Hope he's removed from. That dude should be removed from office like yesterday. He's such a disaster. Such a disaster. Well, let me make sure I didn't miss anything here. I think I got everything here. Okay, now I got that all there. Did I make sure I got everything on locals? We good on locals? Good on locals? We're good on locals. All right, I'm good everywhere. I thank you all for joining, my friends. Like I said, be happy. Make sure you eat. Be happy and eat some bugs. Planes landing in. And I will see you all soon. Adios. Godspeed.